right, welcome to the North Andover Zoning Board of Appeals, the meeting for April 29th, 2026. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first order of business, the meeting minutes from March 24th. I trust that folks have had a chance to read them. Any comments?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it is unanimous. We're going to do a little bit unusual thing today, which I've been trying to keep the regular zoning board business separate from the 40B business. But for today, and hopefully today only, we will have a single item of regular business before we get to the 40B item. And so if you would be so helpful as to, Ms. Rutherford, to read us in on this first item.
Absolutely. Notice is hereby given that the North Andover Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing at the North Andover Town Hall at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Mass. on Wednesday, April 29th, 2026 at 7 p.m. All parties interested in the petition of Susan Tabarro and James Davison for the property at 65 Berkeley Road, map 0047, parcels 0042, North Andover, Mass. 01845 in the R4 zoning district. The applicant is requesting a variance pursuant to the Town of North Andover zoning bylaws, section 195-8.109, table 2, dimensional requirements, for one side setback in the R4 zoning district for the purpose of constructing an attached accessory dwelling unit. Specifically, the applicant has requested a side setback needing relief for a variance of 4 feet. The side setback proposed is 11, and the requirement of per table 2 is 15 feet. Application and supporting materials are available for review at the zoning department located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Massachusetts, Monday and Tuesday from the hours of 8:30 to 3 and Thursday from the hours of 8:30 to 4. By the order of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Michael T. List, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you. Please identify yourself with your name and address for the record.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Chris Crump. I am from CWC Design in Newburyport, representing my clients, Susan and James Davison, at 65 Berkeley Road, not Street. And we are here seeking a variance, as was mentioned, a side setback variance from 15 feet to 11 feet, which is a relief of 4 feet. We are trying to add on an ADU for the parents. We submitted some plans and a site plan which illustrates exactly what we're looking to do. We are incorporating some of the existing house into the footprint of the 900 square feet to minimize the amount of extended footprint outside of the house, and trying to make it as least impactful as possible to both the property itself and the neighborhood. And therefore, if you look at the design of the actual unit, the front door is on the right-hand side, and we've made it as narrow as possible to get access from the front of the house to the ADU directly. And then towards the back, it opens up behind the house to a little bit more expansive unit. It has been approved by the building inspector in regards to the 900 square foot limit, and we have the building permit denial letter included, obviously, as requirement for filing for the ZBA. This is an existing conforming structure and lot in the property, and we feel that 90% of it, of this ADU, will not be seen from the general public. It will fit behind the house, it won't be seen, and therefore we don't feel it will be more detrimental to the neighborhood. And I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Have you talked to the abutter on the side that the setback
Yes,
will
we
be?
did approach them, and I believe that my clients did approach them and told them about exactly what's going on. I do have a letter of support from the neighbors on the left-hand side, and I can share that with you.
So on the other side.
The other side, what the ADU is, I think that they're here tonight viewing. So
Okay.
Okay, and I don't know if you wanted this letter of support, but, or if you want me to read it aloud, or?
Yeah, so usually we try not to enter in stuff on the day, but
Okay.
if you want to summarize it, that would be
Basically, they say they have reviewed the plans to the extent they have been made available, and we have no objection to the project. We believe the addition of the ADU will be a positive contribution to the property and surrounding neighborhood. And please consider this letter as our approval of the proposed ADU.
Okay. Any other questions?
And you'll also be going to conservation since it's in
Yes.
the 100-foot?
We did. We went, there is conservation land, wetlands on the other side of the fence, on the back side in the, I forget what the name of it, Royal Estates or whatever it is back there. We went in front of conservation once. They asked us to wait until we get approval from ZBA. And then pending our approval on this board, then we'll finalize that with conservation at the next meeting. But they didn't have any objections, other than some small modifications, that's it.
All right, well, if there's no other questions, I would like to open it up to the room. And so, sir, if you could please just sort
Yep.
of, yes, thank you.
Give some-
But yes, please come on up. Introduce yourself with your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Lynn Jacobic. I own 2 properties on Berkeley Road, 105 and 57, which is abutting right next door to 65. I did not receive any notice from 65 Berkeley Road that they were planning on doing this. In fact, I did not even receive the first letter that came out that had to be signed for. And I called the Conservation Committee, and they assured me that they were sent out, but I never received the register letter or the note in my mailbox that I was expecting one.
Now, I just want to make sure, this is the note for the notice for this meeting, or is this the note for the notice for the conservation meeting?
For the first meeting, yes. And I was not notified by the people at 65 Berkeley Road about this project. They had texted my daughter-in-law, but not with specifics. And my daughter-in-law told them that since I own the property, they need to contact me, and they never spoke to me about it.
And I just want to make sure, so your daughter-in-law, you said?
Yes, she lives in, I own the 57, and my son and daughter-in-law rent from me, and they live there with their family.
Understood. Okay, so they're the residents of
Yes.
of that property. And so the applicant had contacted them, but not contacted you.
Well, they didn't give them specifics.
Okay.
And my daughter-in-law said, you need to contact me, because I am the owner of the property.
Okay.
And
Have
it's
you
my-
since discussed it with them?
No.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to know about this?
I did look at the plans. The Conservation Commission, Amy, sent me the plans, so I have looked them over. I do have some concerns because my property is very close. It is a small lot. 65 is one of the smaller lots in the neighborhood. If I'm correct, by the plans that I saw, this would be built 11 feet from my property line, and that's what they're seeking the zoning approval for the 4 feet that they need. That would be over.
Right, they would be
Correct.
allowed to build within 15 feet, up to 15 feet, but not beyond that, and so the extra
Yes.
4 feet, yes.
And I'm just concerned because I'm concerned the property value of my home will go down if it's too close. That's one of my concerns. And also, probably something I'll be taking up with the Conservation Commission is there's lots of wetlands back there.
Yeah.
I've had flooding in that basement before. And when we had the heavy rains, there was water coming from behind the Royal Crest properties all the way down. We're kind of on the hill there, and it comes down, it goes all the way down Berkeley Road. And neighbors on the other side of the street actually had their basements flooded when the town was hit by that excessive rain. And a lot of businesses were also put out in North Andover. So that's my main concern, is that it's might affect my property value. It seems to be very close. And the flooding issues, will I get flooding? Because there is a lot of wetlands within that buffer zone. So those are my concerns. I would rather, if I have nothing against them building an ADU there, as long as it conforms with the zoning regulations and doesn't exceed the 15 or the 11 feet, if it's within the 15 feet.
So, right, so they are asking permission to build closer than 15 feet.
Yes.
And how close, just out of curiosity, how close is your house to your property line?
My garage is right there. yeah.
57.
Very close, 57. You can probably see it on the drawing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't show
It
the
doesn't give a
buildings.
distance, so that's why I was
Oh,
just, I was,
okay.
I was just trying to figure out, get a sense of dimension here. Okay, so your request is that we deny
57, that's
this
the one on the right.
variance?
Well,
Because if you're saying you do not want it closer than 15 feet, you are asking us
yes,
to deny this
because
variance?
I feel that it would be very close to our house, you know. And
Okay, and you think that 4 feet would make a meaningful difference to your
I
property
think so.
value?
I think so. I mean, I was wondering if they could revisit the plans and maybe scale it back even a little bit would be helpful, if they wanted to revise them. But that's just my concerns.
Okay.
I think the wetlands will be taken up by the conservation.
Yes.
It's not really in our purview.
I know,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, that is a major concern that I'll be dealing with them. So, but again, it does seem very, very close when I saw that it was, would be 11 feet from my property line. That seems very close. And with the construction going in and out and the dumpster they're planning to put right next to my yard, it was a little concerning. Usually dumpsters go in the driveway, or I don't know why they have to put it right next to me, but, and the
Is the
construction.
dumpster already on site, or are you talking
No,
with them
but
about
in the
where it would
drawing,
go?
it's all there, so I don't know if that's their intention to put it there or what, but,
I don't think I saw a proposed
I don't-
dumpster site.
At least
Am I
not in
missing
this
something?
one.
not in that one. It's
Yeah.
on the sketch, the black and white sketch.
Okay.
Maybe that was something that was
We
submitted
can
to
take this up with
conservation.
with the applicant, so.
Sure.
All right, so
yeah.
thank you very much.
You know, but again, I'm not generally opposed to anybody building on their property, so it's
All right,
just the concern
thank you.
about the closeness. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, if you would come back up, sir. Oh, is there anyone else from the community that, I think everyone else is here for the 40B, so.
No, thanks.
But yes, no, that's worthwhile. So tell me first about the communication issues, in terms of notification
So
and things
there's
like
been
that.
a little bit of, I think, from what I understand, there's been a little bit of I don't know how you'd explain it. Recently, a tree fell on the property from the abutters property onto this property, and it fell on one of the cars, and they had a little dispute about the issue in regards to removing the tree without their permission and so on and so forth. So it got a little, I don't know how to phrase it. And I don't know what happened in regards to the letter to them, because we got the official butters list and we handed it in with all the things to the town.
Yep,
Everyone else did receive it, including myself, because it has to be mailed to me as well.
yep.
So I'm not sure where the mix-up came in regards to the letter that went out to them.
Okay.
So I apologize for that. That wasn't something that we could control, unfortunately. So originally on this, we were originally going to seek a 6-foot relief on the property, and we pulled it back to 4 feet, knowing that we're trying to make it as least impactful as possible.
Yeah.
The layout that we have is just enough to get a door and a hallway and enough room to get by. It's not like we're making it any more extensive, but it's just access to be able to get to the ADU in the back of the unit. In regards to infiltration, water, and so forth, I know that's conservation, but we will have gravel pits around the edges of the eave lines, so all the water that runoff from the property will go into the gravel drains on the side of the property, so we'll go filter into the ground. My clients have never had any water in their basement, but I'm not saying that doesn't mean that's the same for everybody on the around the area. But they've never had any water issues in their basement, so we didn't foresee any water issues here. The building itself is not inside the 100-foot set, no, it's not inside the 50-foot setback. It is inside the 100-foot setback. But conservation so far, pending the little things like putting in a drainage drench around the edge of the roof line, so forth, those were only the minor things that they wanted taken care of in regards to conservation. So I feel confident that we can fulfill their requests and have that approved very shortly.
And if I might ask,
Yes.
The design of the building,
Yes.
the roof line is sloped down towards the neighbor, right?
Yes.
So then the wall that is then going to face the neighbor, how tall is that
It's not very tall wall, so you also recall, if you're not familiar, obviously you wouldn't be familiar, but there's a 6-foot fence in between the two properties.
So that was going to be my next question.
So,
Right.
and in order for, most of the lots on this street conform, they're all conforming to the zoning regulations. So the garage on the abutter's property is most likely 15 feet from the fence line.
Yeah.
At the very minimum. And so you have 15 feet plus another 11, that's 26 feet between structures.
Yeah.
And we feel personally that's a significant amount. The wall that will be going up on that, I don't have the measurement on it directly on me right now, exactly how high that is off the ground, but I would imagine it's probably only going to be maybe 3 feet above the 6 foot. It's not that high because the roof line, and we purposely did it that way, that the roof line slopes down so it won't be a huge wall that impedes on their, towards their view.
Yeah.
So we tried very hard to make it as least impactful as possible in the whole concept and design. We tried to minimize the amount of space that we would need in relief to go to the right-hand side, just enough to be able to get a hallway back to the ADU and behind the unit as much as possible. So we did make all our efforts to try and make this as least impactful as possible. And this is just, again, for their parents to be able to live with them because they're getting to a point where they can no longer live on their own. So we're just trying to get them in there so they can be taken care of and live the rest of their days in a nice, safe environment.
Any other questions?
So I'm confused. I thought you said that letter that you had was from the,
They're the ones on the left.
oh, they're the ones on the left?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The butter that's here today is on the right,
Okay.
which is immediately abutting the addition.
How many square feet is the existing house?
2,200, I believe.
2,200.
2532. I have it on it's on the application, under existing conditions
That's-
description.
Yeah, I thought you would find it faster than I would.
No,
You
no,
were
that's
right.
okay.
No,
I
it's
wrote
a-
it, so I know it.
Perfect. And how much of that is being absorbed into the ADU?
I would probably say about 500-600 square feet, in
Okay.
that range.
So like,
So majority of the ADU, no,
Yeah.
probably about, yeah, it's about half. It's probably about half of what the allowed ADU space is, so 450, 500 square feet is what
Yeah.
we're reusing of the existing house. So again, it's least impactful on the property.
okay. And so the 2,300 square feet, that's after the ADU?
No, the
Change, or that's
23, so you would
before?
deduct the amount that we're using for the ADU, or take it out of the ADU, however you want to say it, so.
Right. So like
I-
20% of the existing living space of the house is being given to the ADU?
Correct.
In order to limit impact on the surrounding area?
Correct. So, again, in efforts to try and make it at least impactful and obtain any more space on the yard or expansion of the house with the unit. And it is only one level. We're not going up any other levels, so it's only one level high.
Do you know if there's any other family units or ADUs in this neighborhood? I don't know how you
It's
would know
pretty
that.
new.
It's pretty new, yeah.
I mean, the ADU bylaw.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah.
But family suites were
Oh,
around
yeah.
before.
ADUs are going like crazy right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that from a ZBA standpoint, right, like the 4 feet is really the only thing that we're considering. It's as if it were an extension that was just built on the house, because the rest of it is by right.
Right.
But, you know, it's not like the family suites where we would have a special permit for that.
Right. No, I'm just thinking about like, you know, in general, the spirit of zoning of like, you know, trying to keep neighborhoods kind of
Uniform.
you know, yeah, like in the same spirit.
And also, one thing to notice, we only have one window that's on that whole entire wall abutting the neighbor, so, and that's just in their entry area or mudroom area, or if you want to call it that. So there won't be any windows overlooking the property other than that one. I don't know if I have a rule, I was going to try and scale the size of the wall on there.
But it's no more than the side of the garage.
Yes, correct.
No taller.
It's no more than the existing side of the garage that's there now, so it's
Right.
just 4 feet closer than the garage that's there now. The same height, and the same roof line as well.
Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Mr. Hatchie? All right, so then I think with your permission, we're at the point where we would close the public comment and deliberate and vote if you are.
She would like to make a comment.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Normally, we do not allow a second bite at the apple, but we can do this and then we will proceed. So I understand. You need to wait until we're in front of a microphone. Yeah, if you're willing to step back for a moment, and then
Whatever you'd like.
we'll do that. All right, we'll try. Please come on up.
Yes, we had a tree, our tree, a portion of the tree fell on their property, and unfortunately, it hit the roof of their son's Jeep. They called my daughter-in-law, and I said, well, you can contact me. I put a claim into my insurance, and I gave them, through my daughter-in-law, we gave them the number to call and see that what I'm saying is true. They told me it was an act of God, and they actually denied the claim. So it would be up to their insurance to pay for, whatever happened. They would need the auto insurance.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate all of that.
Yeah, but I
And from
just
my
don't want
perspe-
them to make me look bad like I was a terrible person.
Well, I just want to make very clear that I don't consider this issue either way.
Okay.
Right. To me, that has nothing to do with with what we're actually dealing with
I
in front
just
of
wanted
us.
everybody to know I attempted to make it right, and then it was act of God, and that
I
was that.
understand.
On
All
the
right.
record.
Okay? I'm not a contentious person, so,
I understand. All right.
okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. So with that, do we have a motion to close the public comment?
Well, did we clarify whether or not he's ready to have us deliberate and vote?
I believe he had said yes.
He said
but-
yes.
I mean, I'd like to continue, but if I know that it's going to be something, we would ask for a continuance of it. We think it's going to be something that's
An issue.
an issue. I mean,
Yeah. I can't quite telegraph that because I am one vote, but
okay,
but I guess the way I would view it is that we're talking about a 4-foot variance.
Yes.
Right. And if we deny it, you can still build it at 15 feet. But if we
it won't happen at 15 feet. There's no room for it if at 15 feet.
right,
The
but
4
my-
feet is literally
yeah.
the width of what we're building.
Yeah, and so I don't know if there's anything that we would want to continue for to try to gather more information to make that, so. All right. Do we have a motion to close the public comment?
I'll make a motion to close the public comment.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are deliberating. Any thoughts?
With all respect to the concerns that have been presented, I don't see that 4 feet being measurably impactful, especially when you look at the fact that the shed itself will still be visible from the road.
Yep.
It's not hiding the shed, so the closeness to the line, which is actually the closeness to the fence, which is then another 15 feet, I feel that this 4 feet is not particularly impactful, nor will it degrade the neighborhood overall. So I feel that it's a reasonable ask for the area and that it has been designed smartly, but that is my opinion.
Especially considering the level of sacrifice to the original, like if anything, the property value of the original house is the only thing that maybe could arguably be taking a hit if, if the ADU were not considered a part of it at all. If it were just like listed as
A separate.
a separate house, it would, obviously that's not how real estate works, but just, in terms of talking about that. And there is a 6-foot privacy fence along the entire property line.
And we're looking at a space that is one window and an entry for light that is a bedroom with almost no windows whatsoever, and there not requesting this variance to contain a porch, a very lovely
Right.
porch that they are sacrificing.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel that the applicant has made a great deal of compromises to get to this place. And I personally am comfortable with the 4-foot variance.
It sounds like the structure that is closest on that side, on the adjoining unit, on the abutting unit, is a garage. It's not living
Yes.
space either.
It's a fenced yard and a garage.
Mr. Hatchie, any thoughts?
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, it is a small lot. I think if there wasn't a fence and if that wasn't a garage in the abutting lot and it was like the house, I think it'd be a little bit different. But I think this design works well. I think it would improve the front of the house. And like you said, like they could have made this much bigger and not taken up much of the existing house, but they didn't. So it seems to be the most efficient. I'm okay with the 4 feet, honestly.
Yeah, likewise. I think the applicant has done a good job of trying to minimize the impact here. I like the fact that it is sloped away from the abutter. I like the fact that it's not very tall along that wall, so, you know, if you push in that 4 feet, like, you then start to get to something that actually looks like a taller building. So I think, I think it's about as good use of this situation as we can expect. So, all right. With that, would you like to read a motion?
Yes.
Do you want any clarity on what to refer to in terms of plans?
So I think we want this plot plan, and we want the revised design set.
Yes, which is
Yes.
March 16th, 2026.
Yep.
And it is how many pages?
It is 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, we don't
Nine.
count the cover sheet?
9 with the cover sheet. Okay. So, since this is my first time reading in, I am reading in a motion to grant the variance for 65 Berkeley Road pursuant to designs at March 16th, 2026 by GWC or CCW Design, of 9 pages, as well as the proposed plot plan dated 2/24/2026.
and then you also got to read in that what the variance
Okay,
is.
and this variance is pursuant to the Town of North Andover zoning bylaws, section 195-8.109, table 2, dimensional requirements for one side setback in the R4 zoning district for the purposes of constructing the attached accessory dwelling unit. Specifically, the side setback needing relief is a variance of 4 feet. Proposed is 11, side setback required per table 2 is 15. So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Hatchie?
Vote aye.
Mrs. Rutherford?
I vote aye.
Ms. Gray Coleman?
Aye.
Mr. Testa?
Aye.
And I am an aye. You have your variance, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Good luck with the 40 feet.
Thank you.
Good luck with conservation.
All right.
Yeah.
And with that, Mr. Hatchie, you are dismissed.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. So I just want to, for the sake of helping inform the public here, we've got a lot of things to discuss, and so I just want to outline a little bit of what we expect to have today. So we have water and sewer reviews. We have a short discussion of some outstanding traffic issues. The parking, there's been a revised parking study that has been submitted, but we've not had time for the peer reviewer to reply to that, so that will be saved for the next meeting. There will be a discussion about DPW came across a possible wetland behind the facility, and we're just going to quickly discuss that, but there's not really a final result of that discussion of that yet. I want to I'll call to attention to some comments, some questions really by Mr. Sarney, and just acknowledge that we are reviewing those. And then we're going to move on to a site visit. So we had a site visit this past week where the board members visited the site, and we'll discuss our impressions and where we think that takes us coming out of this. And then we're going to start to have a discussion about what major changes the board is looking for. So this is really our opportunity to start the discussion on what our absolutes are in terms of approval or not approval. This is separate from all of the small-scale conditions that we've been discussing up until this point. And those, Ms. Murray will produce a list for our next meeting of those items. But this is to say, okay, let's step back and take a larger look at what we're going for. And then we will have a discussion, again with Ms. Murray's help, about the structure of the meetings going forward, understanding where we are in the process right now and what the next steps will look like. Included in that will be a discussion amongst the board about how we will want to deliberate. So we've been holding public meetings up to this point, and then we have some choices about how we want to do our deliberation that leads to our actual vote. And then after that, we will have public comment. So just want to give everyone that preview so that you know what's on the docket and what you want to stick around for and what you can run to the bathroom for and come back later. All right. With that, Mr. Smolak, are you or Mr. Steinberg, are you guys ready to come on up?
Sure. Thank you. My name is David Steinberg from RCG LLC, representing the applicant, East Mill Housing LLC. And as the chair said, we figured we get over the peer review. And the agenda we presented was similar to what you said there, at least to respond to or present the peer review studies of critical infrastructure effect on water and sewer first. And then we're happy to have some back and forth about and closing out traffic. Dan Lasivita from Benas, or VAI, is here. Happy to have further discussion about the board's views from the walkthrough on last Sunday. So if we start with the sewer, I don't know if you have the peer reviewers online to present
we do,
their own findings.
yeah. So I think, the way that we've been doing this up until this point is that you guys can sort of give your point of view on it, and then I'll have them follow up with any additional comments. Okay. That system has worked okay so far.
Yeah, so if you go to the next slide, Terry, we just had a few bullet points, takeaways from this. These peer reviews, the next one, were sort of, milestone peer reviews to see whether the existing infrastructure has sufficient capacity for the project as it's proposed. That peer review presented by the town's consultants. There were hydrant flow tests conducted to make sure there was adequate flow to fight a fire on the property. And then there's a water demand calculation that's based on how many bedrooms are in the unit, what are they expecting for occupancy, and what would be the draw on the water supply. They found what we expected to be true, which was that there's sufficient water service to serve the property without having a detrimental effect on other people in town.
Ms. McNeil, I think you can move to the next slide. There we go.
And so then it was a separate reviewer and review for the sewer capacity. This got a little more technical. So we just quoted a part of it to say they think there's sufficient capacity in the existing system to handle the additional flow that will come from this property. So sorry, that's on the next slide, Terry. And then if we want to go to the next slide, just to jump ahead to traffic as we're going through all this, I think we've resolved the open additional, we've done several rounds now back and forth between our consultants and the town's consultant peer review on resolving the series of questions that have come out during these meetings that were added on to the studies that we initially presented. I did
have questions about water and sewer. Are we going to take them
Yeah,
one at a time,
let's stop at the water and sewer for a moment. Yes, go ahead.
So in the sewer plan or sewer analysis, they sort of talked about different flow rates and capacity, and they mentioned that the 18-inch main that everything would be draining into, is that the same 18-inch main that we're thinking about rerouting stormwater to?
No, no,
different
we
main?
have, we've separated storm and sewer in
Okay.
our design and it's
Okay.
existing infrastructure. So there's an existing stormwater infrastructure through the site, and there's an existing sewer infrastructure coming through the
Okay.
site.
Yeah, because it wasn't clear in the, it just said 18-inch main, and I did not have a map to see where it was, and I was like, I remember there was another 18-inch pipe. So, okay, so that is separate from that.
And we have online, we have Ken Carlson and Nicole Lewis, who are peer reviewers for the water and sewer. Mr. Carlson, Ms. Lewis, do you have any additional notes that you'd like to add to the discussion?
Oh,
Hello?
Sorry, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
can you hear me?
Yes, we
we
can
got
hear
some
the second
background
voice.
noise, but we can hear you.
On the sewer end, I don't have anything to add other than this development will have an insignificant impact on the existing North Andover sewer system.
Okay.
Plenty of capacity.
On the water end, hi, this is Nicole Lewis speaking. On the water end, it appears the evaluation appears to have sufficient capacity to serve this building. I would say the only thing would be if the demands, if the estimated demands change dramatically, we would recommend a subsequent review.
How much is dramatically, would you say? Like 20%, 40%?
Usually the driver for this is anticipated fire flow, and not demands, but if substantial regular demands, I would say 50% or so.
Okay, yeah, that's quite a bit. Is there any reason that you would expect that it would increase? Like, what would cause it to increase by that much?
Irrigation sometimes,
Okay.
but I would say, based on bedroom count, if there's a significant redesign, that would affect it.
Okay.
A significant redesign
As
that
in-
that would be increasing the number of units like by another 50% or so,
Yeah, so then we would
which
be,
is not happening.
right, if we were looking at a 450 unit instead of 296 unit, then we would be having that discussion, I guess. Because if we're talking about a 50% increase. Okay. I mean, that's a fair bit of headroom. Any other questions or comments regarding the water and sewer before we move on to the next piece?
Did I not read in the water that they wanted a secondary after 80% occupancy flow test? Is that correct?
Ms. Lewis?
We did not recommend a subsequent,
It might have been in the
Well-
sewer.
Okay, sorry, I may have misread something.
it's not a bad idea, but, I mean, we don't anticipate it to be
Okay,
drastic.
I remember something similar, Melissa. We can find out where
Okay.
that
All right.
was. Exactly.
Well, we can always pull back, we can always loop back to that if you guys dig up something, but, all right, thank you, Ms. Lewis, thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any other thoughts, or is that pretty much it for you guys?
Pretty much all set.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, any other thoughts before we move on to the traffic items?
No, I was just gonna say on the, the water will be more fully engineered. We're coming to a building permit. There's sort of another bite at the apple. If we've made any substantial changes, it'll be a fully engineered building that the building department will get to review the impact at that time.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan for irrigating?
I haven't actually thought about that yet. Mostly we try to do as much as possible without irrigation as far as the way we're doing landscaping, but we can make that point to be more specific as we're getting our final landscaping plans together.
Yeah.
All right, so on the traffic items, I did converse briefly with our traffic peer reviewer. They are not at this meeting. They will be coming to the next meeting to discuss the parking items. One piece of feedback that they did give is, they felt that the evaluation of Sutton Street, that is to some extent a pre-existing condition. It is not in great shape, but it's already not in great shape, that this does not add, in their estimation, a huge amount to it. But that they recommended that there be some kind of recommendation to the town of improvements that could help from you folks. Just a sense of like, not a commitment that you will build those improvements, but that if you've spent the time looking at this, that if there are suggestions that would improve traffic flow at that site, that would be helpful. That was his comment. We can circle back on that next time and discuss the point of view from the peer reviewer on that matter. But yes, anyways, other than that, as you said, we've had several back and forths. The sensitivity study, showed that it was still within limits. The grades were a little bit worse from what I saw, if you increase 30%, which makes sense, but they did not go below a C value, I believe. Is that correct?
That is generally correct, yes. Just for the record, my name is Daniel Lasivita. I'm a traffic engineer with Vanessa & Associates. Good to see you all again. Yes, Mr. Chair, that is a pretty good summary of the results of the sensitivity analysis. Really what it came down to was the initial study. We essentially had estimates where vehicle queuing at specific intersections on specific approaches may increase by 1 or 2 vehicles as a result of the project. With the 30% sensitivity increase, it ended up being between 2 or 3. So it's another vehicle here or there spread out throughout the study area. But yes, it affirms that, as you noted, with the exception of the Sutton Street, High Street intersection, there is sufficient capacity to accommodate the project. Something else I will also note is that as we also expanded the study area to the 2 new intersections, we not only looked at vehicle operations, but as well as vehicle safety, and found that both of those new intersections were found to have crash rates that are below the average crash rate for similar intersections, which does not indicate that there's a specific safety deficiency there.
Got it. Any questions?
Just to make sure that I'm understanding fully, so the morning peak hours at Water Street and Elm,
Yep.
where High turns into Elm, would be projected to increase by 40 trips during that hour.
Mm-hmm.
Is the only reason why queuing isn't slow there because it's a 3-way stop instead of a 4-way stop?
Yes,
'Cause
so
that seems like it would make a lot of queuing, 40 more.
40 vehicles over the course of 60 minutes is also not as much as you may initially imagine, given the number, but specifically during the morning as well, when vehicles are going to be leaving the project site, headed to that intersection, that is the one approach to the intersection that is not under stop control.
Right.
So those vehicles always have the right-of-way. Then the inverse is true in the morning, where there are vehicles coming from the 3 other approaches. The project-related traffic, we just expect to come from 2 of those, and those were not expected to be significantly impacted. Minor increases in delay and vehicle queuing, of course. It's additional vehicles, but it's not something that pushes things past the problem level of service, essentially.
And my understanding from reading over everything was that 3-way stops don't have as much sort of predictive information built around them. The increased volume of people going through the nonstop coming down from the project, would that create queuing for people trying to go across, do you think? Or how does that get factored into your predictions for?
Yes, so specifically to how we analyze that intersection, this is going to get slightly technical here, but the most
I
recent...
love technical, don't worry about it, yep.
Sounds good. The most recent edition of what's called the Highway Capacity Manual, which is essentially how we run these simulations and determine the delays and vehicle queuing, does not allow for a three-way stop control intersection to be modeled.
Right.
So what we essentially did was we modeled it as a four-way.
Ah.
Then for that one approach that does not have that is not under stop control, we just essentially said there will be minimal delay for that specific approach, but we left the delay for the three other stop controlled approaches as if there was a fourth stop controlled leg. So what that essentially means is that the analysis that we had done is conservative because it added additional delay to the other movements as well.
Right.
To accommodate
Knowing that they wouldn't be given a right
non-stop
of way when other cars were coming through.
That's correct.
Okay, interesting. But you kind of had to jury rig that, it sounds like. It's like-
Correct, yeah. It's unfortunately not as easy as plug some numbers into an equation. It's a little more to it.
Correct.
All right.
You know, okay.
Ms. Jacobs, any questions on your end? No. All right. Mr.
Is she
Testa?
still on the call?
I'm all right now.
All right. Thank you. All right. Are there any more peer review related items that you guys wanted to discuss?
Well, you mentioned talking about the discovered wetland.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next item on the list, but I didn't want to rush ahead if you had something that...
Could we stick on traffic just for a minute?
Oh, yes.
Because this wasn't so much to do with the peer review or the study, but one of the things that had been in there was a condition for the pedestrian crossing control, and you said yes to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another recommendation previously from review that said at 75% occupancy to make the
Re-review.
yeah, and you mentioned that earlier. How do we write that in, or is this a question for a later
So that actually will be a thing that we can discuss with Ms. Murray when we get to the...
when we get to that part? Okay.
Yes,
all right.
because she will be helping us
Okay.
write a lot of this. 'Cause-
That's great.
Yes, because I do not know what I'm doing
Okay.
with regards to writing these kind of things. So this is why I'm thrilled that we get to lean on this wonderful assistance that we
Fantastic.
have. Anything else? Okay. All right. So let's move on to the. So I received a phone call from Amy Maxner that she had done a site view visit and found that there was a possible wetland of unknown at this point size. And the comment that I got from her was that if it's over 1,000 feet, it will require additional waivers. If it's below 1,000 feet, then it does not. Is there anything else that we should know from that?
Well, we did have, and just so the public understands it too. So Phil went up, met with Amy Maxner, walked the whole site.
Yeah.
And I was a little late in the process to try to respond to everything all at once. There was an area where water's being trapped by the garage above, so it wasn't jurisdictional for wetlands because it's not connected to any of the wetlands or within 100 feet, as was previously determined. This area where she identified some concerns, I met our wetland scientist out there just today.
Yeah.
And so she flagged it out. From that review, it looks like it'll be less than 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
So it probably would not be jurisdictional. She sent an email to Amy to follow up to see what the next steps would be there. And essentially, it's some loose strife and other
Frag grass and stuff.
right,
That's what
right.
was marked out in the pink flagging?
Yeah.
Okay.
That just happened today. So it's a depressed area along the edge of the garage. Want to see what the
I
extent
was going to say,
of
it's
that
basically
was.
standing water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's standing water, so it's showing some characteristics. She did some soil tests where she thought maybe that was not necessarily would meet the standards you'd need to. He said it certainly doesn't meet any state standard of what a wetland would be,
Yeah.
but the local bylaw, as Amy said, it might qualify for the local bylaw if it were over 1,000 square feet of that area. So we're going to review with her that she's satisfied what the boundaries were determined and that would be what that amount
Okay.
is. So we can come back, I think, on that. depending what the follow-up is, if Amy's satisfied with it. We didn't hear back. She sent an email off to Amy this afternoon after that walkthrough to see if there needed to be any follow-up.
All right, and then well, first of all, any other questions? I know this is, the other members of the board, I think this is fairly new, but any other questions on that matter? Okay.
I mean, yeah, pending official
Right, we'll
comment.
know more.
Yeah.
All right, so then I do want to acknowledge Mr. Sarney had asked some particular legal questions centered around, at least in my interpretation, and at the end he'll have a chance to inform us if it is different than this, that there's sort of two pieces to these questions. One is, do any of the commitments made during the Avalon development approval affect this approval process that we need to consider? And then the second piece is, would approval of this facility affect the Avalon development's legal status? These are, in my understanding, relatively technical questions. I've asked Ms. Murray to review these, and so she will have a review for us at a future meeting. But I just wanted to acknowledge for the public that we did receive those questions and that we are looking into them and taking them seriously. So just want to put that out there. Any other comments on that from you guys, or there's not too much there.
I think it's a technical question. Obviously, right? We wouldn't be here and have spent this much time and effort and money moving ahead if we didn't think it was all, allowed.
Right.
So we'll leave it up to the town to tell us if they think there's a problem.
Yep. All right.
There were some other, if we're on email submitted questions, I think Jim Collin had submitted some questions about pertaining mostly to like the timeline of commitments that the town has put about improvements on Prescott Street and things like that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a point of order question of like if that is even within our purview to demand.
And Ms. Murray, you should tell me if I'm off base here, but my understanding is largely not.
Right.
Right. So there is the matters that we can ask of the developer to commit to, but that the town's sort of promise to do something is separate from the matter that is in front of us. Is that a reasonable statement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, is that on? Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Carolyn Murray from KP Law, your special counsel. That is generally correct, but there are times when there might be a town-scheduled improvement project, and if somehow or other the project, the application pending before you, generates any sort of impact, there are times when a board might look to the applicant to mitigate their own impacts, or perhaps make a contribution towards that town project. But again, we have to relate it back to how this project might impact what the town is planning to do.
Yeah.
And if they're totally independent, then less likely to be able to condition that.
In a hypothetical, if it seems like we're heading towards doing like an 75% occupancy study for traffic, sort of reassess. That would probably be done after the 2028 plans for improvements on Prescott. There would not be an opportunity to affect the developments on, or the improvements on Prescott before.
Well, there would not be an ability to dictate that the town must fulfill its.
No, what I'm asking
promise
is like
to
if
rebuild the sidewalk.
the traffic study showed that there were outsized impacts on, say, Prescott, that would be beyond the timeline of the town. They would have already done the repaving project if they actually end up doing it in 2028, which is what they've said they would be doing. So then it would probably not. But if it were reversed, if the traffic study were done first, is there an opportunity then to say if it's massively worse than we thought, and as part of their improvements on Prescott, could you put in a stop sign or something to mitigate some of those effects? Is that kind of what you're...
Right. So even though maybe the timing is that the town is going to complete improvements to Prescott Street long before, we haven't even approved this project yet, so
Right.
long before this project will be constructed. If, as a condition of your approval, you do decide you want to implement a post-occupancy traffic reassessment to see if, like you said, has it turned out to be more impactful than is being predicted right now? What I'd anticipate is that if there are any, impacts that are noted beyond what we are aware of right now through VHB and VAI's reports, the applicant would come back before this board to address, so what do we do from here? This has turned out to be, I'll just throw out a number, 30% more impactful than was predicted.
Right.
That would likely lead to us discussing a modification of the comprehensive permit, and it would be an opportunity to discuss things like, is a stop sign sufficient, or is there some other, whether it's through signage, striping, whatever, or a change in the way a traffic pattern comes through the project and empties out. All of those things would be for the board to
Gotcha.
consider at that time.
Okay. Help.
All right. I would like to, at this point, move on to talking about the site visit, because I think that's going to be something that is going to be one of the sort of bigger pieces of our discussion today. Does anyone want to open with their impressions? Or should I?
You can start.
All right. I'm going to be super crystal clear. I think that northwest wing is much too close. Ms. McNeil, I took a picture and I asked to have this presented up on the wall here. So just for everyone to understand, that's Mr. Steinberg over there on the right. Just behind him, it's a little bit hard to see, is a flag. That flag is the marker for where the edge of the building is going to be. That bush that is there, that bush that is there, there's a sign right next to that. That is where the edge of the property is. And on the left there is the garage for 39 Prescott Street. And the building will, as it is constructed, go up 45 feet from, with some of those terracing, with some of the slope backs and things like that, step backs that we talked about earlier, but it will go up 45 feet from there. This is really close, and this is certainly what I'm about to say is not particularly the applicant's fault, but there is, for better or for worse, a difference between what is your actual property line and what feels like your property line, right? And if I were that applicant and I looked at this yard, I would feel like the building is physically in my property, right? Like that is obviously not the case. The line of the property is in a different spot, but it is really, really close.
Especially because there would be no vegetation between,
Right.
it's just lawn between the
There will be a
buildings.
fence.
Okay.
But there will not be vegetation in that corner, right? And this is when we had that landscape review, there's that little gap, and I'm like, why is there not a tree? And it turns out it's really hard to
There's
fit
literally
a tree.
no place, yeah.
Right? It's hard to fit a tree in that space. So it is super duper close. And it's one thing to see it on a map. I think it was really useful to do this site visit and actually see it in person. I've sort of ranted a little bit here, but would anyone else like to weigh in with their
This is super
impressions?
helpful because I was not there at the same time as you all, and I genuinely was like, that must be a mistake where that is. So yeah, thanks for confirming.
I was also a bit surprised at the impact to that neighborhood. Again, it is very different looking at it physically than it is simply seeing it. And it does feel invasive of the space. And I mean that with zero disrespect to the plans and the efforts that you have made, but it is a struggle. I also have grave concerns about the amount of environment that is being an older growth, longer term growth, things that are being removed without not a per se one-to-one, but without seeming to be accounted for, because the vegetation that is there is a buffer today between the Hill Street and the upper Prescott Streets view of East Mill and Avalon, and then eventually this, and that's seemingly going to be wiped out, and I'm a little uncomfortable with that dismissal of the environment.
That corner where you're standing, is that the edge of the parking garage? Like, or is that the back wing of the building?
It's about where the parking garage meets the building. It's almost exactly on that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I thought so, but I wanted to be positive.
Yep. Ms. Jacobs, did you have any thoughts? I don't know if she's dropped off or if she's available. All right, Mr. Testa, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that, and as well, I thought it was awful close to the street, that end of it.
On the west side?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it is very close to the street. At least there is the spacing between, the street itself is a gap between the house and the development, but yes, it is also very close to the edge there.
Now confirming that stake seemingly in the yard is the edge of the building, going back in my mind to the landscape plan, they talked about preserving like the stand of mature trees by the road. I don't know how they would do that if the building is going that far into the property. That seems implausible to me. I mean, I know we're not talking about landscape at this exact moment, but just in terms of thinking about the creation of the space and how it gets maintained and transformed. Yeah, I don't know. Seems implausible.
Any thoughts from you guys?
No, I appreciate the comments of the board today. I think it's consistent with what we've been hearing along the way. We've been doing some studies on what we can do to push the garage around a little bit to try to give a little more preservation of the buffer as much as we can. I think we'll be able to present even in a couple weeks at least those preliminary studies to give you guys the direction that I think we'll answer that. We're sort of working in 3 dimensions at once. We wanted to make sure we got over some of the other feedback in different areas. And it probably won't be a perfect plan to present yet, but I think we have some ideas that might work that could still be economically feasible, and we could try to work on those buffers in particular there. I think just to follow up on the comment against Prescott Street, there is, as we get, as the building approaches Prescott Street, obviously the buffer becomes much bigger against the adjacent property. It's, I think, 50 or 60 feet along Prescott. And that balance against Prescott is trying to sort of match the setback of the other houses that are along Prescott. It's pretty close. The subdivision, the sub-district guidance is actually bring the buildings as close as you can to the street to engage with the street. And then some of the underlying zoning historically was, when it was industrial, to pull it back from the streets. So there's a little bit of a balance we're trying to achieve there on having a good design. Again, I think these comments that we're hearing are things that we're actively working on and we'll be able to bring back to you.
If those stakes are near the edge of the building, I think there was in the plan also like a playground between the buildings and the street. Is there space for that?
I'd say it's more between the buildings and the courtyard.
Okay.
So between the buildings and the street, there's actually not much except for landscaping, a retaining wall in an area, some fencing.
Okay.
So I think we're mostly trying to buffer along Prescott Street with landscaping.
Mm.
And the activity all happens within the confines of the courtyard.
I mean, I'm going to show my cards a little bit for the next section, but I think this needs to be a minimum of 15 feet further back. at least in that corner, because I just, like, I don't know how, we just talked about, before this, we just talked about a variance where it's 11 feet from the property, but it's a, 12-foot tall side of a building, right? And the neighbor didn't feel great about that, right? And so you can imagine
16
when it's
feet
16
and 4
feet and
stories.
it's 4 stories, right? It's just, it's a different thing. And obviously this building is serving a different purpose, and there is a need for affordable housing across Massachusetts that, this law exists to support. And that the threshold of meeting local needs that supersede that desire for more housing is a pretty high bar. I'm no legal expert. I am not, I can't tell you how the courts are going to view, but like, I look at it and I'm like, that really gets up to that line, right? That this is asking an enormous amount of that neighbor in particular. And yeah, and I really think it needs to be pulled back from that.
Even
By a
15
substantial amount.
feet would still be like basically the edge of the existing lawn.
You're not wrong,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's still close, and I still don't feel great about it, but like, that's my minimum, really,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, and you guys can set different numbers. I'm one vote on this. If you think it should be 30, you can say 30. We will have a discussion in a moment about that process and how we think about it. But yeah, I think it needs to be pulled back.
I don't want to repeat too much of what has been said, but I have to agree in the sense that actually doing that site visit really put the emphasis on how much this building is going to just topple this neighborhood. So I do agree that I think, and we all know how I feel about double digits. Yeah, I think we really need to put more thought and consideration into that impact, because that's just really, really big when you're standing there versus seeing it on paper. So that's really just the one thing I'm going to throw in there.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs.
Do you know if there's a distance from the front of the garage, or I guess the north to south, where it ramps up? Like, it has to be a certain distance in order to get your run for the cars?
Yeah, that's what created this conflict in the initial plan, that to get, right, the full circulation, to do a complete circulation to stack the garage.
Right.
We need a certain distance off what are the easements to the south, all right, so the depth of the garage. And that's something we're trying to work on, if we can shift it around a little bit. I think that there's a few other things that were mentioned. One, we're working off of, I think it's just important to remember, we're working off sort of what's existing zoning versus what we're asking waivers for, right? And how far things would have to be to comply with zoning versus where we wouldn't need to ask for the waiver and where we do need to ask for the waiver. So I think, those dimensions are kind of built into the zoning. The height is sort of definitive of that. In this area, we're beyond what the existing zoning requires. And I think that there's, one of the things I've asked our architects to work on is that question of impact on the neighborhood, have more perspectives, sort of three-dimensional perspectives of how the buildings will look in context from the street, including as we've revised them. I'll see what they can put together for that. That takes some tricky three-dimensional modeling. But yeah, the challenge with the garage and making the stacked garage work is that you need the depth to circulate.
Right.
Right, yeah. So-
And are there, like, I understand building symmetry is attractive, but are there other restrictions about moving the garage further off-center so that you'd have more flexibility on how you align the living quarter wings with that? Because, like, I do understand that you can only make a parking garage so small before you're, like, you need a Humvee to get up it, like, right? But it doesn't have to be in the center of the building, as far as I know, unless there's, like, restrictions on how long you can make a hallway or how many windows you have to have, something that I'm not qualified to know about.
No, actually, the study we're focusing on now is shifting it right deeper. The site, the property lines sort of fly away from that corner, that really tight constraint. So even moving the garage over, say, 20 feet would create a much bigger buffer there. So that's really what we're experimenting with. We have to have enough room on the back side of it to fit the units for a second building.
Right.
That's sort of the challenge of making sure it can align for circulation and other, challenges of civil engineering, firefighting, all those sort of things. But that is something we're looking at, and it would be asymmetrical as far as the buildings go, but not in any noticeable way from the street. That'd be detrimental, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, the only way you could maintain any sort of vegetative buffer is if you didn't go any further back than the current parking garage on that corner. And even that would be pretty disruptive to the trees on that tightest pinch point. So just in terms of like things that would help me feel comfortable as if it were possible. I understand constraints, but for me, if on that side, it could not go further back than the existing parking garage, if it's possible. That would be much more tolerable. And if there were some plan made to preserve the existing mature vegetation, because even newly planted trees would be decades before they would hide a 4-story building. Like, there's no way.
Did anyone have any thoughts from the site review that are not specific to that corner that we haven't discussed?
I don't think I realized how close it was to the Water Street developments either,
Yeah.
and how small they look in comparison to what the building would be.
Yep.
That's right? The Water Street, the ones
Yep.
by
Yep.
I think you mean Walker Road.
Oh,
Walker
Walker Road,
Road.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the one. Yep. I think that was the other thing that kind of struck me walking around there.
All right, well, I think I'm gonna take a little bit of a chair's prerogative to lay things out as I sort of see them. And Ms. Murray, I'm sure I will say something wrong in here, so please feel free to cut me off and interject with where I've gotten things wrong. We are getting through the point of our peer reviews where we've gone through sort of step by step a lot of different features here. And as one of the abutters has pointed out, a lot of the discussions have felt like nipping and tucking. And this is, now that we have worked our way through that, this is our opportunity to discuss things in sort of more macro scale terms. I think we now have a pretty holistic view of where everything stands. That said, I also want to point out that there are some limitations of what the 40B law allows us to have, where it allows us to have discretion and where it does not. The abutters have, on multiple occasions, asked for the development to be cut in half, approximately. In my opinion, that is not going to happen. And unfortunately, asking for it would actually be detrimental to asking for things that could happen. And what I mean by that is that we have sort of a limited number of bites at the apple where we can ask the applicant to go through the process of a pro forma and showing the financial the financial impacts of what we are asking them to do. And if we ask them to cut it in half, it will be very easy for them to say that this is uneconomic. And if we deny anyways on that basis, we will almost certainly lose in court very quickly. So then the question is where we have to sort of play a game of what can we ask, what is prudent to ask, and what would be the thing that would provide the most relief for the impact on the community, where either it is economic and viable for the candidate, for the applicant, or that if they decided it was uneconomic and we pursued it anyways, that we could reasonably defend as meeting that very, very high bar of local interests. Did I describe that reasonably well? Okay. So now that puts us in a little bit of a position as a board of having to feel that out, right? And some of that is in discussion with the applicant, and some of that is discussion amongst ourselves in trying to understand best what we think meets that very high bar of local interests that supersede the need for housing. I've made pretty clear just now that I do think that corner does meet that high bar, and that I think it needs to be at minimum, and we can talk about what that number should be, but I think a minimum of 15 feet back, and that if that makes the development uneconomic, then I would still consider whether or not I'm able to approve a development that doesn't move that distance back. That's sort of my hill that I'm willing to die on, but I would like to open it up to the board, and I don't want to limit this strictly to talking about setbacks or that particular corner. This is more global, that we can think about any aspect of this development that is an absolute hard line in the sand for you folks.
I do think we need to put in some sort of conditions on traffic, because, I mean, it's not, or even just like a post development, or a 75 or 80% occupancy study with some conditions on it. I mean, we've all driven in this area. My own boss got into an accident on Sutton Street leaving the Mill District. Like, it is not, it's not something that we can easily just ignore as not having an impact to public safety. Like, I mean, not just property values, which, I mean, property value is very important too, but public safety is I think in the list of things that can be considered when talking about a 40B. So I think we have to talk about
Okay,
something.
so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question for you is, what is the specific concern? What is the threshold? And you don't have to have an answer today, right? This can be an evolving conversation, but like, what is the specific concern? What is the threshold that would trigger a need for a remedy?
Mm-hmm.
And what would that remedy be? Because I think that's the sort of thing that we could then put into a condition.
Right. So this is where I am not a traffic study professional, so I don't fully on my own feel comfortable coming up with parameters that, that would create barriers to development that might be egregious or undershoot it so much that it's leaving a possible weakness for the town. So, I don't feel personally equipped to be the one to set parameters for thresholds for when action would happen. But I mean, the peer review, who are experts, recommended a study to be done at 80% occupancy.
Yep.
And that recommendations then be made to the town, but I'm wondering if it's possible to put stipulations that they're at a certain threshold, some of that would be mitigated by the developer instead of just by the town. Because one of the things that I think everybody is asking for us to consider is how much more does this obligate the town to mitigate the effects of this project that doesn't wholly benefit the town.
And I guess where I'm asking, because what I can do is I can take some of these questions back to our peer reviewer. They're going to be at the next meeting, and I can ask them to put together a package of some options.
Okay.
So I'm happy to do that.
Fantastic.
But I want to make sure I'm addressing the correct things.
Yeah.
Right.
I think for me, the big things are intersection safety, like,
pedestrian safety?
pedestrian and car safety, going through some of these intersections, and specifically pedestrian safety along Prescott and High Street, moving away from the mills. I think in the mills, I think everything has been developed in a very thoughtful way, but moving away from this towards the larger intersections or the more high traffic parts of town, I can see definitely being questionable. And maybe everything goes perfectly and all the projections are exact, but.
Right, no, exactly. I don't think these are unreasonable. I'm trying to turn them into specifics so that we can actually build a set of conditions, right? Because to me, I think what I'm imagining is that we say, okay, everything so for example, for the intersection delays, that things are going to meet a minimum of a C grade. And if there's anything that's worse than a C grade, then is there a specific remedy we can ask that would address that? That would be option one, right? But that's really about time and the amount of time that cars spend in the intersection, right? So then the question is, can we create some kind of metric around safety, right? Number of accidents, I hate to reduce these things to statistics because no amount of injury feels good, right?
I think it would lean towards a safety parameter, just because, especially the intersection at Sutton Street already is an F, so it can't go any lower. So if we're looking at increased quality of experience going through the intersections,
right? But that letter grade is not safety, right? That
right,
letter
that's
grade
what I'm saying,
is
though.
delays,
Right.
And so
that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is if we're using that threshold, that is not helpful, in my opinion. The thing that I would find helpful is a safety parameter.
Right. And so that's something that I can ask of our peer reviewer to see if there is some way that we can think about measuring that, and that if it were to exceed it, is there some kind of remedy that we could propose?
What condition? And I'm happy to see comps on similar projects if that is a thing that they are equipped to do or would not be egregious to do. I don't necessarily want to invent a whole new thing that I don't know is possible, but I have not personally done this before, so.
No, but I think this is a great example, right? This is something that I think there is probably a way that we can turn this into a condition that is something that we can request. It's just a matter of finding specifics, and both in the metric, the threshold, and the remedy. And if we can figure that out, then I think we have a condition.
Okay.
So to the concern threshold kind of is on one side of the equation, and then the equal sign is the condition. I look at this and I look at the number of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, and I think of, the low income housing, and I think of families, right? And so we've physically seen the degradation. We're all experienced with it as North Andover residents, and we know that that is a traffic shot for pedestrians, children essentially, to walk to high school.
Right.
And or bike. And so one of the things that I'm not seeing addressed by the counting of cars is the counting of people or the individuals doing that. So, my concern is if we are adding family space, 2 and 3 bedrooms, what is that impact on the pedestrian population walking north? I've lost my north and east, lost my directions there. I understand that
Mostly east.
the applicant is not responsible for 100% of Prescott Street, but within the zone that they are occupying, is there a possible condition to ensure that residents, children, or children making cut-throughs will be safe? I understand there's fencing, but kids jump fencing. I jump fencing. And that rather than waiting or for the 2028 redivision, is there a condition that we can ask for support of traffic, sidewalks, whatever it is, that would be appropriate to ensure, at least for those residents, those families, those children who are going to be walking in that direction? And by the way, I've got an 11-year-old who's going to be heading that way in a few years. So that at least on that corner, they're as safe as possible from that perspective. So that is a concern, that this traffic, no offense meant, you're counting cars, but I'm also thinking of people. And my very flighty 11-year-old who is much more likely to be singing herself on the way to walking to school than anything else, so.
I believe you're looking like you would like to interject with some thoughts.
There was really just a couple things I did want to clarify, just to kind of help with this conversation as you're having it now. The first thing I will start with is relating to the post-occupancy monitoring study that was recommended by VHB. So this is comment 24, in case anybody has it in front of them. That monitoring program was, as the comment is written, was limited to a monitoring of the westernmost driveway relative to allowing that to be full access versus one-way exiting only at 75%. So I did just want to, because there was talk of the monitoring and things, so I just wanted to clarify as to what that specific comment
Sure.
was about.
Yep.
Not saying anything about the monitoring that
That we might propose.
that you have been discussing, but I did just want to identify what that was.
Is that also factoring in what was in their new comment number 32? I took a note, but I did not write down all the verbiage in it. But were you also looking at that when you were?
Let me look at comment 32.
I will also try to find it. We'll race.
I'm going to let you both do that.
Oh, they did have
Three
another
site driveways that
follow-up.
intersect.
I apologize. There was another new comment that came out of another letter. Yes, so I apologize. You are very much so correct, but it was 75% versus the 85% occupancy as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, we can talk
We can
about
get
those
into those
fine
details.
margins, but yeah, I don't think, I think that re-review makes sense. I think the real question is, what is the content and what is the thing we're looking for, right? Because I think to Ms. Rutherford's comments, we've had at least two different conversations. I'd say three different conversations, right? One is the amount of car traffic and the ability of cars to get through that area, which is one standard. Then there is the accident rate of cars, which is another standard. And then there is the safety level for pedestrians, which is a third, right? And I think, I think we need to delineate specifically which of those we're talking about. I think the second two are the ones that you are most interested in.
Yeah. I think the amount of time that it takes to get through the area. I used to live in Malden. There is no amount of traffic that this could possibly add to this that would faze me personally. But in terms of like how that impacts safety and ability to live with children and families in this area, I think that it makes a big difference.
So relative to the safety, you had essentially made a comment about how whether this is something that's been done before, if there's something that can be pulled from. This is absolutely something that is requested. Specifically, safety is included in monitoring programs as well. VHB did have that recommendation. They had limited it to the safety at the driveways. But one thing that is oftentimes used, and we used it in the study, and you actually heard me mention it today as well, was the crash rate for the vehicles at the intersections. So just as we're kind of thinking about, and this obviously is not a conversation we need to have now, but as we kind of work forward to develop conditions, there are oftentimes certain things where we will re-review motor vehicle crashes at the study area intersections and see if there's a increase such that those vehicles now have an above average crash rate per million vehicles that enter the intersection, something like that. So that would be where we would essentially be expecting the condition to be going towards.
Is there a way to look at the crash rate? I know that if I recall correctly from what I read, you are using the Massachusetts data, which was most recently released for 2022. Is that correct?
The Mass DOT motor vehicle crash data, they have essentially compiled and given the okay for everything through 2022. Yes.
Okay. So Avalon opened in 2023, correct?
That sounds about right.
Okay. So that area in the space of the last 18 months has increased locally. Is there an ability to query our local EMS or police department to see if they've seen a year-over-year increase in crashes in that area? I don't know that there has or hasn't, but I'm just trying to understand because we've had a drastic traffic change in that area that is not accounted for in the state or national data.
Absolutely. That is certainly something that is oftentimes done for the exact reason of Mass DOT is often a little, maybe sometimes a lot behind on updating their current data.
Of course.
So that is oftentimes what the condition will be written for, is reach out to the local police departments to obtain their motor vehicle crash data.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, that sounds like it would
And I
be a
can reach
good
out and
request.
see if they have some data for us.
Cool, great. Yeah, I understand it's not quote-unquote official, but at least it gives us something to work with.
Right, yes, absolutely.
Frank, did you have something to say about traffic?
I'm all set for now, thanks.
Okay.
Is there a way to study more pedestrian safety? I mean, because crash data won't, I mean, unless a car hits a pedestrian directly, it doesn't necessarily show how, what the impact on pedestrians would be. Like if it shoves more people over to walking on, or biking on the sidewalks and things like that, that it would also be a safety hazard.
Yeah, well, and this is what I mean by about finding a metric, right?
Right.
'Cause I think it's a non-trivial question because, you know, you optimize the thing that you set, right?
Yeah.
And so I think this would be a good conversation with this gentleman, but also with VHB as well, and just to see if there's some way that we can think about that as a.
And they will be here for parking next time?
Yes. I think one of the challenges, I'm going to be honest, is
Data?
we're asking about a fairly small area,
Right.
and any study that's done is going to be done over a relatively small period of time, and so you end up with small sample size issues, right? And so, you know, if, for example,
Also,
the expected number of incidents is 2 and you have 3, is that a 50% overshoot for the actual, you know, for the number of incidents, or is it, well, okay, that was sort of in the variance, right?
Right.
If it was 70 and it went to 95, then I think we would have very high confidence. We would also be horrified.
Yeah.
Right, of what's going
Yeah.
on there.
And also,
And it would be-
we don't have a long history either. We don't have data compiled from Mass DOT for the last whatever for pedestrian safety on Prescott Street. So like, yeah, I understand
Yeah.
there is a heavy limit to what we can measure and figure out.
But
I'm
maybe
just
there's
wondering
a
what
creative-
possibilities
Yeah,
there
so
might
maybe
be.
there's a creative solution we can come to here. So let's think about this offline. But I think this is important enough that we should invest some effort into it and to see if we can come up with a way to handle this creatively.
Okay.
So you had said we could kind of talk about all of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, again, back to your concern threshold equation condition.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that the applicant has asked for a carte blanche, variance to 100% of environment. And I would be more comfortable if it was very specific to what they need rather than carte blanche, because if we give the full variance, not saying you're gonna
waiver,
do
yes.
anything,
Yeah,
waivers, thank you. That if something comes up and that waiver's been granted, then you can continue through because the waiver in full has been granted. We don't have an opportunity to try to find a solution that would be satisfactory for the town and the impacted property.
To be
I've
clear,
actually-
sorry.
Sorry.
I don't think we're currently looking at any waivers for conservation. It would just be if this wetland
Yeah.
becomes a thing, right?
Well, so first of all, yes, that, but I want to address this more globally, which is that in the original application, they basically asked for 100% waivers of numerous things, right? And one of the feedbacks that we've given to the applicant is that we would prefer to have more delineated and itemized and specific waivers. So for example, for the parking, you know, the original waiver ask was just for 100%, right? And what we came back is we said, okay, if you actually only need 100 spaces to be waived, then we would rather just approve that,
Yes.
right? And I think that applies across the board.
Same thing with stormwater
Water and
draining and
yeah.
whatever.
Exactly.
Right.
So
I
it-
just,
so,
I
yeah.
wasn't sure, we talked about it, but we hadn't
Yeah.
come back to it recently, so I
So-
apologize, I was
no,
not
no, no,
trying to.
This is great, because the next item that we will talk about once we get through this part of it is what the structure looks like going forward. And one of the pieces is that I'm going to ask the applicant to start putting together that waiver list, right? And then they're gonna come to us with waivers and we can look at them. And if they're not specific enough for our needs, we can give feedback that we want them more specific.
Specific,
So, but I completely agree, right? We should be approving what is necessary to make this happen. We should not be providing blanket waivers to cover anything that they would want to do in the future, right?
Yes.
I agree with that.
And I know we kind of moved on from setbacks pretty quickly. And I know you said 15 feet further
Yeah.
is sort of your minimum. I think, and I mentioned it earlier, but I'll bring it back into this conversation. I think for me, I don't know that it's a hard line. I would have to look at whatever design was presented, but no, on that edge, no further than the current structure would be my strong preference.
Okay.
I don't know how strong a preference it needs to be to trigger a pro forma, but
Well,
if there's any way we can avoid going all the way to that point with considerations beforehand.
I mean, I think the way to think about that in terms of the pro forma, right, is that we have a limited time frame.
Right.
Right now, we are extended out to the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
The applicant does not necessarily have to keep granting us extensions. At a certain point, we have to make a vote. But if we're making reasonable requests and we're asking for reasonable things, then that's okay. But if we're asking for a pro forma, that takes a fair amount of effort, and we're likely going to get one bite at that apple. And so, realistically speaking, I think we as a group can sort of decide on one ask. And then once we have that ask, if they say that's going to be uneconomic, we can say, prove it. But I don't think we're going to get like 3 or 4 times to try that.
I guess that's part of why I was asking how, and I'm not the only person on the board. Everybody else can weigh in too. But I guess to me, 15 feet for 4 stories is just not enough further back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea, to pull back to the garage, I think would be about another 30 feet. It would be 45 feet roughly set back from the corner there.
Right.
Anyone else have thoughts on where their hard line is on a setback?
I would be curious to see this 3D model, and thank you for kind of advancing that idea, to get a better sense of that. Again, I'm wondering if there are design opportunities which ruins the reflection and the parallelness of the buildings that allow you to tackle this contentious area by maybe not being as symmetrical, and being more creative. So I don't know that I know what a number is, but it is uncomfortably close for me to approve unless it becomes a vital need. And I don't have enough information right now to understand what I would be asking if I agreed with the 45 feet or the minimum of the 15. So I will do some education on my end as well for that. But I think we have enough time if we have until the 30th of June 2026 to give the applicant the opportunity to give us some more tools before we have to decide that. That's my thought process.
Yeah. So in terms of time, I should explain a little bit, right? We have until June 30th right now, where then the public meeting must close.
Yes.
Right. And so if we decide that a certain number is what we absolutely require, and they say, we don't think that that's going to work, and then we say, show us,
Yep.
then they have to have the time to produce that report.
Yep.
And then we have to have time to review it and have a reviewer review it for us.
Right.
So realistically speaking, we don't have a lot of time.
Okay. So
Right.
Unless we ask for
I
another.
would, right, unless we further extend, right? Like my preference would be to have a sense of a number now, but I think we really need to have it probably the next meeting.
Right. I'll give my sort of rationale for that is that it's 45 feet back from the property line to keep it at the existing structure. but it's maybe 20 feet back from the edge of the currently cleared area. So, you know, in terms of like, and I don't just mean this in terms of like, oh, it feels really close. I mean, like, there's just nothing between these two structures if they go fully inside that
And that gives you
vegetated
the
area.
opportunity to have vegetation, to have
Yeah.
additional
Like
options.
if you just see a lawn between structures, that isn't even in single-family units that are proportionately sized to each other. There's
Right.
always some sort of landscaping between, not just lawn. So that's part of why that feels to me like a line.
Can we invite the applicant to comment on this discussion or provide more information?
Yeah, but I think I want to get just a little bit more feedback from other members before we do that, but then yes.
Okay.
Ms. Jacobs or Mr. Killalay, any thoughts that you guys have?
I'm not going to waste time repeating. I think I'm kind of really falling in line with other board members on a lot of this stuff.
Okay, but do you have a number in mind, or are you still undecided?
I'm not comfortable to put a number at this point.
Okay. And Mr.
Yeah, I
Kelly?
think, I think what I'm hearing is, you know, in line with my thinking as well, so I don't have anything to add to it.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I don't need to put a number out there.
Okay. Mr. Smolak?
Good evening, Mr.
You have
Chair.
some thoughts?
Thanks. Just a few thoughts on behalf of the applicant. I haven't had a chance to discuss some of these items, obviously, the applicant, but just a couple of things to bring it back into perspective. I think a lot of great ideas have been identified here, and I think that the applicant has moved pretty far in a lot of things, and we're going to see some more creative ideas at the next meeting. One thing I will mention, though, in terms of traffic, I think we're going to resist post-permit traffic mitigation, because that's not a situation that usually arises. If it's a question of a stop sign, that's one thing, but I'm not sure how you create such a remedy in that circumstance. And I think that you have, I would argue, the best traffic engineering firm here this evening. You also have probably one of the best traffic engineering firms reviewing for peer review. And that peer review consultant has already identified mitigation, which they felt is appropriate and prudent for this project, this size and scale of project. So I just want to premise those comments with the fact that you've already had an independent third-party peer review on traffic occur here, and has basically concurred as to traffic with our consultant. And that's a standard that we have to meet as generally acceptable standards of safety. Secondly, in terms of setbacks, we're certainly going to learn a little bit more at the next meeting. But I will say that keeping the existing building, or keeping the proposed building at the existing setback, that I think is a red line. That's a non-starter for us. I don't think that's feasible for this project. I think that what we're trying to do is, in the spirit of cooperation, try to come up with a sensible compromise as to that setback. So I think it's a little bit premature to be throwing out numbers at this point until you see what we come up with in terms of a design. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And in terms of waivers, we're certainly willing to adjust our waivers, and we will update our waivers. And I think we've come a long way in terms of identifying opportunities to sort of tone down or sort of minimize the waivers that we have. But also keep in mind that the overlay district that we have here does permit a lot of what we would otherwise be able to do here if it were not a residential situation. So, but we are certainly mindful, and I think you've heard it from Mr. Steinberg, that he is sensitive to the neighborhood, and even before we started this process, did reach out to the neighborhood as well. And so efforts are still continuing in that regard. But I just wanted to say that the applicant's not going to be going to write a blank check for mitigation, where particularly something isn't warranted, and not that that's been inferred here, but I'm just saying that if you're putting together a wish list for mitigation, that's not the objective here.
I'll put your
So-
mind at ease, we're not talking about that, we've never
Yeah.
done this before.
No, I
We're
understand.
looking for some level of like communication with our
Sure.
own like town experts about what
Sure.
is like possible and
Sure.
typical for these sorts of things. And we wouldn't be like just trying to get as much as,
Sure.
it's not a cash grab on like the town's
No,
part.
no, understood.
It's like, it would be high thresholds for things that were unexpected. And, you know, we're just looking for,
Yeah.
to do some fact-finding missions on what we can and should do.
And, you know, look, I want to, I appreciate that you're going to come forward with some solutions that in the next meeting. I hope that you understand from the folks at the board, that hearing from us, that we also have some red lines. And we're going to have to see where we are when we have those, but I want you to be ready for the idea that we have some pretty strong feelings about that position of that building. So, and look, I was polling for numbers not because this is going to be everyone's final vote and everyone's final number, but I want to set some expectations because that way I don't want you to come here and then propose something and us say, that wasn't what we're looking for, and you feeling totally sandbagged because we didn't tell you, right? So I want to be clear. I want to be as open as possible with you and with the community about where we are seeing things. And if you change our mind, then we'll have that conversation. But like, you know, I just want to be as open as possible on that.
No, we certainly do appreciate it. And I appreciate the effort and the time that the board has been putting into this process. And certainly, I think the dialogue between the peer review consultants has been very helpful and will continue to be helpful to sort of narrow down any outstanding items or issues or potential mitigation that might otherwise be required. So I think we want to certainly continue that dialogue.
And on the traffic mitigation, to echo my vice chair's points, I think this would be looking for outliers that extend beyond, you know, that basically show things as different than what is predicted, right? That, as you point out, we've had we've had a review, we've had peer reviews, we've had multiple back and forths, and that there is a roughly agreed upon set of metrics that we would expect this facility to produce. And this would be some kind of backup in case it is way outside of that, right? Again, and likewise with, you know, us, you're asking us to have some patience with you in terms of proposing a design. I think have some patience with us and figure out what we propose. I have a hunch that what we propose on that side won't seem utterly ridiculous, right, in what we're asking for.
No, the board has been very fair all along in this process. I just wanted to sort of provide that additional comment as well. So appreciate it.
All right. Any other thoughts, big things before we move on to talking about our schedule and our timeline?
For context for the redesign that you guys are working on, you know, if fully pulling back the setback is less possible, could be mitigated by lowering the height of at least the portion that is closest to the property lines, in my opinion. So.
All right. I think I'm actually going to, for this next part, start by turning to Ms. Barrett. So up to this point, we have mostly been dealing with peer reviews. You know, today was our first sort of macro scale discussion about things that extend to the entire project rather than taking it on piece by piece. So help us understand a little bit of what the timeline of this review process should look like and where it goes from here.
So you have another meeting in a few weeks.
2 weeks, yep.
2 weeks, and the peer reviewer will be here to talk about parking, as I recall, right?
Yeah, and that'll be sort of our last piece of that.
Right. So the challenge, I think, always for a Board of Appeals in like where we go into toward deliberation and decision process, is do you have the information you need to make a decision?
Yeah.
That always, for me, is when you decide you can close the hearing.
Right.
Do we have the information that we need? And I would say you don't want to close the hearing until you have the information you need, because once you've done that, you can't ask for more information. So I think after next week, or after the next meeting, you might want to just really take a look at what you have. And, I mean, I can certainly take a look as well and sort of think about, what do I think maybe you still need that you don't have? But you're going to want to do that so that you can have that conversation. Is there something we still need from the applicant or our own consultants? Because at that point where you can say, no, there's really nothing more we need, theoretically you can close the hearing. But you certainly can start discussing kind of where you're going with it, even before you close the hearing. You just wouldn't make a decision while the hearing was open. But you can start having a conversation, and maybe, as you did tonight, sort of discussing some possible ideas so the applicant has a chance to respond. I think the more conversation you can have with the applicant, in some ways, the better off you are, because if you end up rendering a decision that the applicant doesn't like, at least the board can say, we didn't hold anything back, we didn't spring any surprises on the applicant at the 11th hour. The applicant had an opportunity to hear everything the board was thinking about and comment on it or provide some additional information. So that's, I think, the point you want to get to is, do we have the information we need? And at that point, you could close the hearing, and then you have, as I think you know, 40 days to make your decision and file it with the town clerk. So I think you're getting there. I'm pleased that you had this discussion tonight, because I think the applicant does need to hear so they can be planning for what's coming. And I also feel very strongly that wherever the waiver list is, this is sort of my always big issue, is I just hate sort of blanket waivers. So we need to make sure before you close the hearing that the waiver list you have says, the zoning bylaw allows X height. We are asking a waiver to Y height. The zoning bylaw says we have to have X amount of parking spaces. We are requesting X. So it's very clear, as I think you were trying to say, what it is that you're waiving. So you're not end up in a position where you get something you weren't expecting.
Yep.
So that would be part of the, do we have all the information we need?
Right, and in that vein, right, so
Yeah.
I have asked the applicant that at our next meeting that we start to have a draft list of waivers so
Yeah.
that we can start to review those.
Yeah.
And similarly, I've asked Ms. Murray to start drafting a list of conditions.
Right.
She has also been so kind as to forward us sort of like a boilerplate, baseline set of conditions that she typically includes, and I have forwarded that to the board. You guys, I know, have not had the time to look it through. But I just wanted you guys to be prepared so that then when the full list comes, you start to have an idea of what to look for. But we will walk through all that in detail.
Yeah.
But to your point, like right now, we've talked a lot about this development, but we don't actually know what we're voting on.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
And so we do need that information.
You really do.
I have a question, which is that, so once we feel that we have the information, what does deliberation look like?
Kind of like what you started tonight, frankly.
Okay.
I mean, this was almost like I guess I call it like a pre-deliberation in a way. But you start to kind of lay out as a board, like, here are the things that we really care about. We're looking at the requested waiver list, and you might go through that waiver list and just have at least a straw poll, if not, an actual decision about the waivers. You would want to do that, because if you granted all the waivers, you're essentially saying the applicant can build the project.
Right.
That's essentially what you're saying. So you want to be really clear with those waivers. Are you okay with all of them? And if
Yeah.
you're not, then at least the applicant knows the waivers that the board is unlikely to approve. And that might affect the conditions that Carolyn writes into the permit. I'm not speaking for you, but
And so, you mentioned rendering a decision after the public meeting is closed, right?
yeah,
And
you don't
so-
want to vote on this before the hearing is closed.
Well, look, I'm normally used to dealing with non-40B business on the zoning
I
board, right?
understand.
And
I
so, as you
understand.
saw earlier today, we voted on it as part of the public meeting. Technically, we closed the public meeting, but we were still on camera, still in front of a microphone. So how does this look operationally?
Okay, I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood your
Yeah.
question. Once you close the hearing,
Yeah.
and you're now moving into deliberations, that all still happens in a public meeting.
Gotcha.
but not a public hearing. So when you close this hearing, you darn well better make sure that you have all the information you need, because you're not going to be able to ask the applicant for additional information or for commentary. You can't have a conversation with them. You can't have a conversation with the public, but everybody can be in the room to observe the board's discussions. That's still a public meeting.
Understood.
So that is pretty similar to how we typically do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so, I'm assuming that around that time or shortly thereafter, there will be a working draft with all this content we just talked about. We've already got the procedural history down, but it's sort of like, here are the potential conditions we might want to impose on this if we're going to approve it. I think that if the board ends up in a position where you feel like your bottom line and the applicants are just too far apart, then the findings you're going to make and the decision are a little different from we're just going to approve it. Because essentially what you might be finding is North Andover doesn't meet the 10%, therefore we have this local need that's unmet. But there's a local concern that outweighs that regional need, and that's a very high bar to meet. But once in a while, a board ends up in that position, and we hope that that's not the case here.
Well,
But
help me
that's-
out a little bit, because I understand that in principle that it's a high bar, but what does it mean to be a high bar? Like, how do we judge what it means to meet that high bar?
That's why you want to be able to have as much discussion in the public forum as you can while there's still an opportunity to get comment. And I think you're going to know by the time you close the hearing if what you want and what the applicant is willing to live with. Or I just think you're going to know. I've never seen one where people just didn't know. So, Carolyn, I think you want to jump in too, but.
If I may for a moment, so.
Yes, please.
So one thing, I know it's been a while since you've probably looked at the original application, but you did get a waiver list as part of the application.
Yes.
I'm not saying that it won't be revised, because these things tend to evolve as the process goes on. So but you do at least have the starting point of waivers that
Yes.
you could look at. One thing that I think I might just amplify, and I know Judy alluded to this, but typically a board might have one meeting that is dedicated to just going through the waivers. We go through them line by line to really understand, and I'm in complete agreement with Judy. If the setback is 15 feet and you're looking for a waiver, I don't just want a waiver, I want to know it's a waiver to 10 feet, 7.5 feet, whatever it happens to be. Because I always look at the decision as it's the tool for the building commissioner.
That's right.
So when those construction drawings come in, and the building commissioner is looking at your comprehensive permit and looking at the waivers to see what did the board grant, don't tell me you just granted a waiver from height, because height could be from here to eternity.
Right.
So,
You could build the Tower of Babel.
exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and we rely heavily on the applicant to provide that detail, because they've provided, all of the plans, and they can easily, much more so than me sitting at my computer with my magnifying glass trying to read what all the measurements would be. But also, I think we might want to also consider, some boards will start deliberations before the public hearing closes. I've had some boards that never close the public hearing. They keep it open the whole time. I'm not suggesting that you want to necessarily do that. But what I typically start to do, as I sit here and listen and I go through the reports, particularly peer reviewers and all the recommendations they make, I'm constantly making notes about potential conditions.
Right.
Because I'm assuming, and I want to emphasize assuming, that the board is going to approve the project. And the reason I approach it that way is it's a heck of a lot easier to draft and to reverse an approval to a denial by just deleting a whole bunch of stuff than it is to assume you're going to deny it and then you approve it and I think, oh my God, we have all these conditions about traffic that we didn't consider. So I don't want anyone to read into it as you start to see that from me in the coming weeks. I don't want anyone to think that I'm predicting how the board is going to vote. I just want you to see the full universe of potential conditions that are out there. One of the things I also typically do is I share the draft decision along the way with counsel for the applicant. Very much for the reasons like that Judy was saying. The applicant may move this far forward and we may move this to this point, but we still have this gap in between. But as much as we can work out and resolve, and sometimes it is really just wordsmithing.
Right.
Or it might be, oh, I didn't quite understand that, for example, with the picture you were showing in the northwest corner and lack of vegetation, if we had simply neglected to note any kind of vegetation there whatsoever, when in fact perhaps someone wanted to see if we could squeeze some vegetation in, or making sure that the fence is duly noted if that's what we're going to do. Or sometimes an applicant may say, I'm willing to plant vegetation on the private property owners on the other side to create a little more privacy and screening for them. All of those things we might want a little bit of give and take with the applicant up front. But then I do think we reach a point where, thank you very much, we've got all the input we need. Now it really is just decision points for the board. And you're down to basically 8 weeks, which is not a lot of time to start to squeeze this in. And I'm not suggesting we will need a further extension. I'm not suggesting that the applicant wouldn't be willing to grant one. But right now, that's the deadline we're working towards.
Right.
So I know, Mr. Chair, you want to talk about scheduling so that we can start to plan this out too. But I would think that we'd need at least one hearing to consider the waivers, another hearing where at least a draft of a decision is still discussed with the public hearing opened.
Yep.
And then perhaps you're ready to close after that.
Okay, yeah, I think, so laying out talking about that timeline, and I think both of you can help me understand if this is a reasonable timeline or not, right? So we have another meeting in 2 weeks, and that meeting, I've asked for initial drafts of conditions and waivers, but that I am expecting will not be fully complete, especially since there might be some design changes. If those design changes are massive, I don't see any way in which we don't extend again. I think it's just gonna be too much.
Right.
But assuming for the moment that they're minor enough that we feel like we can keep going, then then probably the next meeting after that will be the one where we go through in detail the waivers and the conditions. So that would put us probably early June. And then the meeting after that, which I'm assuming a roughly 2-week cadence here, so something like mid-June, would be the public deliberation. And then at that point, we would probably close the public meeting, and we would then move to deliberation, at which we have 40 days at that point to be, completely open. I don't know why I'm telling everyone my personal life, but I am going on vacation to Costa Rica between July 17th and 30th. So I do not intend to hold a meeting from Costa Rica. I don't think that would be very effective. So we would need to figure out within that timeline how to make those pieces work. But
Does the 40 days of deliberation after closing public comment include, can it only exist within the current waived time period? Like, does that also have to be over by June 30th?
The extension's for the public hearing, yes?
Right, the
Okay.
extension also agreed to extend, so we have 180 days technically.
Right.
For the public hearing. So we've got an extension of that original deadline was supposed to be May 19th. So now
Right.
we've got to June 30th.
Right.
If you close the public hearing in theory on June 30th, you would have 40 days to
From June
deliberate from
30th.
then.
Okay.
yeah, and so we may even want to time it like that, but we can figure that out.
Depends
as
on
we
how
go. Yeah.
much
And,
media gets.
40 days of deliberation, or when we deliberate, would be a public meeting as well?
Public
Still a
meeting.
public meeting, but you're no longer seeking input from folks.
So we can never have a meeting or discussion amongst ourselves without being
An executive session.
an executive session.
There's no executive
There's
session.
no basis for one, sorry.
No,
That's-
fine. I
that's part of the
just,
open
someone had
meeting law.
mentioned that
Yeah.
you should have a meeting, but I didn't think we could, so I
Yep.
just want to make sure.
Yep,
Got a question about the 40 days.
yep.
I heard you mention that it has to be filed with the town clerk. How much time does it take between us making our final decision and vote to getting it filed?
14 days.
So it's actually more like,
27.
thank you.
26
4
days, yeah.
Well, oh, no, okay, yeah.
Oh, so that's
it-
after the 40 days.
Yeah, so we come to a decision at a public meeting, and then we have 14 days to file it with the
To
town
file
clerk.
it, correct.
Oh, beyond the 40, okay, so that's after the 40 days.
Yeah.
The 40 days does not have to be inclusive of the time to file.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we just review the dates that we're talking about for the next few meetings?
Yeah, I
That's
don't
what
have
we're-
fixed dates yet, so we.
Okay.
we-
Planning
we-
that today, right?
But but I'm roughly mapping out something that would be something like May 14th is our next meeting. That is fixed.
That's a Thursday night?
That's a Thursday night. But beyond that, we don't have dates set yet, but I'm assuming early June, mid-June, end of June. That's 3 more meetings, basically.
Could squeeze one in after Memorial Day because Memorial Day is early, so we'd still get one more in May.
Okay.
Obviously, space.
Yeah, okay, so possibly, yeah.
Because that would
possibly.
still be 2 weeks, because it would be the 14th, and then if you went 14
Yeah.
and then 14, it would be the 20th.
So we have our regular zoning board meeting on the 26th.
Okay.
So it would
That would
be,
be
it
2
would be a
meetings
lot
a
of
week.
seeing you guys and you seeing me, but we could maybe work that out, so. I think that, the trick with cadence, right, is that you want to have them often enough that you're having as many meetings as you reasonably can to gather as much information as you can, but you also need to space them out to allow people to have time to prepare what they need to at the next meeting. And so, we'll have to work out that balance. Mr. Smolak, yes.
Mr. Chair, sorry to spring this on you, but for the 14th, we've learned that Vanass can't be available on the 14th. I know that you identified the 19th and the 21st as well.
The 19th is not available.
Okay.
The 21st may be. Oy, oy, oy. I believe that date is still open for the town. I don't see any other public meetings on that date.
The 21st.
21st instead of the 14th. Do members of the board have any objection to the 21st?
Do I get cake? It's my birthday.
It's your birthday? I will get cake.
I'm
I will
kidding.
bring
It's
cake.
fine.
Should we sing?
No.
No. I mean, only concerns about the time constraints that we've just been talking about, but
I mean, that's the thing,
It
right?
is what it is.
That
Yeah.
this just makes it one step harder to fit everything together.
Yeah.
Um,
I wish I had known this earlier, but
I mean, it doesn't sound like it would have made a difference necessarily because the other restriction was available space, right?
The other option is that we can, Mr. Smock, if you want to stay up for a moment. The other option would be for us to still have the meeting on the 14th, but not include parking. And then have a follow-up meeting on the 21st that is just parking. And then at least we get in and out as quickly as possible on that meeting.
Do we have enough fact-finding stuff to be worth coming in for?
Well,
the
if we're going to
14th?
be discussing waivers and conditions, we will have plenty to talk about.
That's true. So we would have then more than one meeting about waivers and conditions. Because we would still want to have one after the parking.
Possibly.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, depends on whether or not a new waiver or condition is generated
brought
from
about
that.
Mm.
And the waiver list we have, or the conditions that we have, doesn't tell us the distance that it's is requested and what is the bylaw, right? It just tells us that they want
I was gonna say,
Right.
some of them are more specific, like the parking ones that I've actually looked at are much more specific. Others are a little bit more broad.
Right.
So, those would be the ones to focus on to make sure we get as specific as possible on all of them.
Yeah, I would like them to be very specific, right? To basically, as close as possible, be limited to the plan that has been proposed that we are approving.
Is the 13th not an option? I kept thinking Wednesday nights for these hearings, so I'm just trying to get.
Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday,
the
7
13th.
o'clock, 7:30, flip a coin.
The 13th is not available here. And so we would have to be doing it at the senior center. I guess it's possible.
That would mean it would have to be at 7:30.
It would also be the day after town meeting
Whoa.
for our town. So
That's a little
I think
intense.
probably not.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right, I'm just trying to make myself as available as I can, and I know I
Yeah.
can't be here on the 14th. I have my own 40B hearing in my own town that night. I will see another KP Law colleague that evening.
All right, so my
21st.
impression is that we should still continue to the 14th.
The-
It just that we will move the parking off of that date.
Well, it sounds like Judy also can't be here for the 14th.
Oh,
Does
you
that
also
make any
cannot be here
difference?
for the 14th as well?
The 14th, I have my own public hearing that I
I
have to
see.
be. I'm on the
I
board
see.
in my own town, so.
Okay, all right, so then the 21st is a date, is that a date that is available to you?
I can join remotely.
Okay. All right, then I guess we continue to the 21st. Mr. Smolak, I might ask a little bit of grace then if we end up having to move the timeline a little bit towards the end of all of this.
Yeah,
Okay.
we should be making progress. I'm confident we'll be making progress, so.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think if I look at what is in front of us, I think just editorializing here, and I'm obviously one vote, like, I think most of this we will be able to find agreement for. I think the biggest sticking point is gonna be the setbacks, and we're gonna have to work through that.
Sure.
And so we'll see what the next iteration looks like.
I actually just texted our architect just to make sure he's available on the 21st, so.
Oh,
I think
thank
it
you.
was before,
And,
but-
and I will check, make sure with VHB that they're available on the 21st, because I have not had a chance to now verify with them that they are available at that date. But hopefully they will be. I guess the silver lining is that this gives both the applicant and Ms. Murray a little bit of extra time to develop their stuff. So I guess that's the good news there.
In case VHB is not available on the 21st, is the 20th not
Well, we need to just pick a time right now.
Because we
so
have to
we're-
continue it to
right,
that
we have to
time.
continue,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
I think we're just gonna pick that date.
All right.
And
Go for it.
worst case scenario, if we cannot do parking there, like, we will again have plenty of other things to talk about. And so, and my estimation is that the parking is important, and we need to make sure that we figure out, the correct waivers and the correct conditions. But I don't think this is gonna be the thing that stops
The train,
stops us
sure.
in our tracks. I think that is really about the setbacks for me.
Sure.
All right. So we just dumped a lot on all of you board members. Any thoughts or questions?
This is a fascinating learning experience, and I'm thankful to everybody who is being patient with us as a board as we're doing this for the first time and trying to balance a multitude of needs, and it's appreciated, and thank you.
All right. Well, with that, it is finally, to the folks who have been extremely patient, time to open up the floor to public comments. So we've got the list. All right, first name on our list. Oh, I need to come back to the microphone. The first name on our list is Ms. Sarni at 39 Prescott.
3
to start?
No.
Just putting the time on the clock.
My name is Kelly Sarney. I reside at 39 Prescott Street. We still want to reiterate that we strongly oppose the approval of waivers for setbacks and height. We looked at the markers placed. The building is very close to the sidewalk on Prescott Street, as well as our property. The parking garage and part of Building 1 is way too close to our property line. We ask that you respect our right to have the proper green space. We respectively disagree with comments made after I had suggested reduction in units. First is because upon research, and I may be wrong, most 40B projects, one of the biggest significant costs is the land, but RCG has owned this land for the past 15 to 16 years. Secondly, RCG agreed to have the reduction of the units in Lot 3 to get the town's approval for the 51 apartments that was supposed to be known as the East Mill Flats. We have issues with parking and traffic. First is where are the cars that are currently using the 100 surface spots in the existing parking garage going to park during construction? If the answer is they will park in the West Mill, then how come that is not being done currently? Prescott and High Street is not wide enough to allow parking on the street, especially near that intersection. We are concerned that Prescott and High Streets will become the next Water Street. There are supposed to be time limits for parking on High and Water Street. These time limits are not being enforced currently. When we first moved in, we saw police monitoring the situation and issuing tickets, but that stopped many, many years ago. If these time limits were enforced, it may potentially have changed the traffic pattern in this area. With the number of cars in a confined space, we will directly be impacted by VOCs and benzene that are known carcinogens. Also, the amount of heat the parking garage will cause will make poor air quality, as the heat won't be able to fully escape, as it will be a partially enclosed garage and due to the size of it. Question is, where is the snow from the top level of the garage going to be put when it snows? If the plan is to dump it over the back of the garage, wouldn't that eventually affect the building structure? We are concerned that the grading and any retaining walls will divert water onto our property. We are also still concerned about flooding. We keep talking about the most recent flood, but we also had the Mother's Day flood of 2006 that caused significant flooding in this area as well. Mother Nature is not going to wait 50 or 100 years for the next big storm. We know the garage will have to be lighted for security reasons. These lights will be directly at our house, and being so close to our property, at night when residents have their lights on, we will look like a spotlight is shining on our house, especially in the winter months. We are concerned about the placement of security cameras, as they will record directly into our house. Most cameras can see 30 to 100 feet. We are protected by the Massachusetts Privacy Act, and I am assuming the cameras will not record audio because we would need to legally consent to that. Due to the closeness of the proximity to our property line, we ask that vibration monitoring exist at all times. Our house shook during the construction of Avalon East, and that was much farther away. We are concerned about our house's structure as well as our pool structure due to construction. We will protect one of our biggest assets, and with this being said, to have construction start at 7 a.m. during the week is not acceptable due to the proximity to the residential homes. I'd also like to clarify that Mr. Steinberg did reach out initially before the start of this hearing to review the plans with us, but we have not heard any other communication. And after the last meeting, I couldn't happen but notice that Minco 505 Sutton buildings, the building closest to the residents on Surrey Drive, is only 3 stories, while the other buildings are 4 stories. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next one, Mr. Steinberg. So a couple things. So one is where will cars park during construction? How does that work?
The plan now would be to phase the construction in. So one of the benefits of having the sort of 3 lots that are being developed, parking lot building, is that we can preserve parking on the site. While, for instance, we build a new parking garage, then we can activate the new parking garage while we build a new building. And so we can move those cars around. I think as we go more into the parking, the question about is it sufficient to move it around the site? I think there are ways to reconfigure parking on the site. You know, people on the campus essentially use the whole campus as an ecosystem of parking, and could be moved around as well, but that'll be part of our construction plan, and we'll have to do that for our tenants as well.
And I think we've talked about snow removal a couple times, right? But remind me again what the plan is for snow removal from the garage.
I think on the top, there was a question previously about the top level of the garage, which would be the part that gets snow. Where would that snow be put? I think traditionally it's just sort of, you know, you don't get snow removal trucks up there.
Yeah.
So you just sort of deal with it through the winter. And if some of it, you know, got moved down, you know, the back side of the building, I don't think it's a structural issue. But we have to have a snow plan where we're placing our snow during storms. We've done that in other phases too, so I think we're.
Yeah, I mean, I think the abutter is, understandably, given her proximity, worried specifically about snow being basically dumped over the side of the building. So, like, I think I think she would like some reassurance that that's not the plan and that won't be happening.
Well, we can look into what you do with the top level of garage snow in future circumstances. You know, now that's what we do with the top of the garage. We have to move it off. To create spaces, we move it off the edge of the garage into a safe area. This would be from a greater height, so, you know, maybe you push it down, maybe you have other ways of melting it.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe putting a condition, because I know you have a maintenance plan that you're submitting as part of this. If the condition would be to push storage for snow away from that, where the pinch point of the property line is, like only on the right side.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you can't throw snow onto your neighbor's property.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, but if it were written as a specific condition that people could be held accountable for, it would probably be more comforting.
Yeah, because the reality is, like, you know, if you were 75 feet from that building, we would have a different set of opinions, right? But when it's 15 feet from the property line, like, if it goes over the side, it does end up in her property.
Yeah, there's no way it wouldn't.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I mean, I think it's a condition we can obviously satisfy, and we would satisfy to not get snow on someone else's spot, and we can diagram on our plan as we go through the revised landscaping plan with whatever landscape design areas where snow could be stored.
Ms. Zarni also asked about security cameras and whether they will be pointed in the direction of her property.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't thought through the placement of security cameras. Usually they're just in, you know, common areas and lobbies and facing out into parking areas. I don't anticipate something wouldn't be recording into a neighbor's yard.
Well, but to be clear, right, again, I hate to keep banging the same drum, but, like, if you put a security camera in the garage and the garage is 15 feet from the property line, it has a good chance of being able to see into that property. And so I guess the question is how do we, you know, like, we can orient cameras so that they face the other direction, but we would need to be explicit about that.
Yeah, I guess, you know, we could put in our building plans the placement of the cameras and what they're covering. When we get to the point of designing cameras, I don't think we've been through that before, and this early in a process of designing a building, of exactly where the cameras would be aimed, but we'd be found with the condition that the cameras can't be aimed onto the neighbor's property.
And then also vibrations, right? So I don't know what it looks like underneath the soil there. I don't know if you have to blast some bedrock in order to build your foundation. But again, if you're that close to another building, if you start doing that, it will be significant vibrations, right? So how do we understand what that's supposed to, what limits we're supposed to put on that kind of thing?
I think that's a question of, and maybe KP Law can help with what a standard condition has been in construction management plans for vibration monitoring for an adjacent property. I mean, I think we'd be willing to, you know, consider anything reasonable that's been asked of other property owners before.
Okay. And Ms. Murray, maybe I can get your help on something there?
Well, typically, we certainly have conditions built in when blasting is expected.
Yeah.
I've only had one occasion where folks have asked for vibration monitoring where no blasting was proposed.
Right.
And in that circumstance, the board actually backed down from just requiring vibration control because given the location, they said, how are we going to be able to tell whether it is that truck
Yeah.
that suddenly causes the crack in the foundation as opposed to, you know, somebody else's truck totally unrelated to this project.
Yeah.
So I've only ever seen them related to blasting.
Okay, so it would be something that we
Right.
would introduce specifically if there was going to be one. Mr. Killalay.
Yeah, I've often had to do vibration monitoring when I've had projects that involve pile driving or drilling or geo piers or rammed aggregate piers as well. So I think, I don't know what their soil conditions are there, but it's not unheard of that they might have to do some sort of ground improvement that should have monitoring.
And you know, again, this is just a, like, if it wasn't so close, I would be a little less worried, but like, I do think about if there's bedrock 4 feet down and then you have to get 10 feet down to build your foundation, like you're gonna have to do something pretty significant to get through that rock, and it's probably not just gonna be a jackhammer. And so, yeah, it's a reasonable concern.
Other concerns that I was thinking about are like construction timing, and possibly construction, like routing of trucks and things like that. My memory of when we've talked about this before is that you weren't very far along in planning a lot of that. Is that something that you've?
Well, construction time, I think, are town bylaws. I think the building commissioner just stated the hours that anybody's allowed to do construction in town. It wasn't
Yeah, but in
especially
terms
for
of
this
like routing
project, so-
trucks in specific ways,
Yeah.
or like dump sites you were planning, you hadn't figured a
Yeah,
lot of
we
that
haven't
out.
done a full construction management plan with a contractor for the building, so typically we'd review that with the building department as we get to that point. You know, I think it's very hard to be too prescriptive about where a truck should go on any given day. Forget about like, looking a year or two out on what the correct, you know, what the most beneficial route is for the town. And I think, you know, that it would be reasonable to have that conversation with the building commissioner or other town departments, you know, when we're approaching construction about how they want us to route the trucks.
Mr. Smolak.
Yes, if I may add to what David had just indicated, typically what we've seen is a post-permit condition for a construction management plan, and that management plan is usually developed by the general contractor who comes on board, and then it's prepared by the general contractor in consultation with the owner, and then reviewed by fire, police, safety officials as well to sign off on it. And that's, again, typically, you know, all the concerns that were raised, you know, dust, noise, vibration, are always addressed in that manner, at least in my experience.
All right. Next up, we have Mr. Holland. Welcome back. Please state your name and address.
Thanks very much. I think I'm between everybody and going home, so thank you very much. My name is Jim Holland. I live at 43 Mount Vernon Street. Chairless, Vice Chair Craig Coleman, members of the committee, thank you very much for letting me speak tonight. This is not on my comments, but I wanted to just appreciate you doing the site visit. I think that was really important to do, and so thank you for taking the time to do that. I remain very concerned about the size of the proposed project, its proximity to the abutters, and the neighborhood's ability to handle the large volume of traffic from the proposed development. Residents have proposed a size proportionate to the neighborhood and the town's current infrastructure. These proposals should be taken seriously. I think they should be taken as seriously as the step backs in feet that you're proposing. We have as much information as you do about the financial viability, which is presumably really very little. So those proposals have as much significance as any step backs or setbacks. I think I'm really concerned also about what this project means. The town has developed this problem over many years with housing, and now our neighborhood, and in particular my neighbors, are being asked to shoulder that burden directly. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's something the board should approve. I don't know if that's raises to the level of what you need, but I just think it's a fairness issue. I'm very grateful the board has started to just look at and discuss the needs for upgrades to pedestrian infrastructure. Fully 1/3 of Prescott Street sidewalk is not there. So, I know the developer is most concerned with what's happening in their very immediate area, but, other developers go as far as proposing community benefits, doing things to help to reduce the impact of the big building that they're putting into our neighborhood. So that is an idea or an option that you might want to consider. I'd like to request more clarification be added in the traffic report about Prescott Street. I think there's a few different areas that could get more clarification. In particular, I think it should be pointed out that 1/3 of the sidewalk is missing, and that proposes a very big hazard to pedestrians. That's not really clearly stated in the traffic report, and I think it's kind of doing a disservice to the public information not to have that pointed out clearly. Let's see, if we just had a question. Yeah, I guess, it would be helpful to hear a little bit more about about the responsibility of that issue of remedying that. I appreciated, some of the comments you made earlier in the meeting about it, but to me, I'm starting to feel like no one's taking responsibility. Like, the board can't tell the town to do it. The town may or may not do it. It's on the plans, but I don't think it's been approved in town meeting. And I haven't heard the developer interested in doing it. So I feel like, the table should be set before this development is put in place. And if the table's not set, it shouldn't happen. And I think that missing sidewalk, that raises to the level of a really severe concern. So thanks very much for my time. I'll finish
All
there.
right, thank you, Mr. Holland.
You're welcome.
All right, that is the end of my list here. Is there anyone else who would like to come speak? Please.
Good evening. Michael Hakim, representing my son Daniel Hakim and his family of 7 who reside at 55 Prescott Street, abutting this property to the rear. I'd like to address the question that you raised initially, Mr. Chairman, about the macro issues, the density, the height of the buildings. You made a comment about, almost sounded as though assuming that if the board requested that the developer cut this development in half, that would be not cost effective and that you would have no further chance for discussion of compromises or asking for show proof in the form of pro formas. They are not that complex. Many developers prepare a pro forma before they even begin a project just to know that they're going to be cost effective. So I'd like to, in that regard, I'd like to point out Mass Housing's report at the beginning of this process, where they identified 4 recent multifamily high-density permitted developments in North Andover. Avalon, Princeton, Minco, and Berry Farms. Those 4 projects had densities of, in order, 9.57, 9.3, 3.24, and 26.09 units per acre. That makes 75% of those developments under 10 dwelling units per acre. This development is proposing 48.3 units per acre. So I ask you, first of all, why would you entertain such an outlandish, in my opinion, increase in density where there's nothing of that nature in this entire town? If those other four developments at those much lower densities could be built and were cost effective, you shouldn't, in my opinion, you should not just assume that cutting 48.3 down dramatically to whatever number you can ultimately negotiate with the developer, you should not automatically assume that that would not be cost effective. And I think that you can, if it takes 2 or 3 pro formas on the part of the developer to demonstrate and help you determine where that point is that makes it cost effective for them and acceptable to the community and the neighborhood especially, I would ask you to pursue that approach. The other comment I have, and this is what I really came here this evening to discuss, because I didn't know we were going to talk about macro issues, but the traffic. Not necessarily the traffic, because it seems as though it's been covered in detail in terms of numbers of vehicles and when they're traveling and so forth. But I'm concerned about the turning movements. If you look at the driveway entrances to both East and West Mill off of High Street, they are, the center line of those 2 driveways is within 100 feet of the center line of where Prescott Street meets High Street. So if you can just envision all the various movements from all of these developments that exist today, plus adding all of these units for Zero Prescott, and you picture drivers approaching High Street and the uncertainty of whether they have the right-of-way, whether it's safe to pull out, there's certainly going to be delays of all kinds of several different natures. There's probably going to be some fender benders. Hopefully there won't be any serious crashes, but the turning movements are going to be complex. Those that exist today, plus those are going to be added as a result of this development. I have heard them testify about traffic. I haven't heard them make any comment about any traffic proposals for improvement along High Street and the Prescott Street intersection. So I would like to know if that's being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Murray, you've weighed in on this before, but I just want to sort of go through it again. Mr. Hakeem mentioned the idea of basically proposing a cut to the size of the development and then getting a pro forma back and then using that to see at what point that we could actually cut down to and still be economically feasible. My understanding is that that is not permitted by Massachusetts law. So if you could help me out a little bit.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. It's actually specifically spelled out in the regulations that govern 40Bs. And I'll read so that no one thinks I'm just making this up. But it specifically says, a board may not conduct a review of a pro forma in order to see whether a project would still be economic if the number of dwelling units were reduced, unless such reduction is justified by a valid health, safety, environmental design, open space planning, or other local concern that directly results from the size of a project on a particular site. So in other words, you've got to first identify that there is a local health, safety, environmental, open space concern. And typically we do that with, we have a bylaw, we have a regulation that says X. And if the project is not going to meet that bylaw, that regulation, and I'll use the northwest corner of the building since you've been talking about that so much tonight. they need a variance. They also need a height variance, but also setback would be closer. So if you were to find that there is a greater public safety need by not granting the variance from a setback, or for not granting a height variance because you think that it's going to create too many issues in terms of privacy, density, any kind of shadowing or impacts, things of that nature, you have to identify that. And you have to give the applicant an opportunity to hear it, much like you did earlier tonight. We're not happy with this. We'd like you to look at how you might be able to address it. The applicant has to have an opportunity to come back and say, okay, I've heard you, and I can address your concern.
And Mr. Hakeem mentioned, as his justification for the local concern, that this is way, way more dense than anything else in town, right? Does that meet that kind of threshold?
I wouldn't say automatically. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with those other 4 projects off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But my first question would be, were any of those 40Bs?
Berry Farms was.
Berry
The
Farms
others
was.
were not.
Okay. So we want to make sure we're also comparing apples to apples in the sense that if others are of a lesser density, that may be because that's what was required by the applicable zoning in that where they're located. Versus, we know in a 40B, we could override all local zoning if that's what the board chose to do. The other thing is we have to be careful not to treat non-40B projects, not to treat 40B projects differently from, say, conventional projects. So yes, it may be that, those are 4 projects that were looked at, but that doesn't become a hard and fast rule, quite frankly. There may be different reasons here why a greater density might be more suitable than it might have been at those other locations. Or it could be that the other projects, like I said, had other restraints by virtue of zoning that couldn't take advantage of, say, the 40B process.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come and make a comment? Sure. Please make it quick, though, because we are reaching the end.
It's Jim Holland, 43 Mount Vernon Street. It's just, I think I had 1 minute.
Yeah.
It's just a informational question. Was there a Prescott Street volume and speed study done? I was recently looking at the traffic impact study, and I only saw data for High Street. And I'm just wondering if Prescott Street was done as well. If not, why not? And why don't we do it? Thank you.
Mr. Steinberg, or do we have?
Dan might be able to recall. I remember we looking at speeds on High Street. I don't know if we
Yep.
looked at speeds on Prescott.
So through you, Mr. Chair, what was referenced as what was being done in the traffic study was we completed a 48-hour count
Right.
on High Street in the vicinity of the project site that looked at volumes as well as speeds from which to assess site distances for that roadway. We did not get one of those counts on Prescott Street.
Okay. And what was the rationale for doing High Street but not Prescott Street?
Because we have a driveway that comes
Yeah.
out directly onto High Street. So when we're making sure that we're looking at things like safety and looking at things like site distances, it's helpful to attain speeds there.
Yeah.
As well as 100% of the project-related traffic will be traveling onto High Street, right? It's the only means of access to or from the project site. Not all of the project-related traffic will be going onto Prescott Street.
Is there a chance, though, that the building as designed currently will change sight lines coming down Prescott?
I do not believe so. We did many site triangle figures for that driveway, where that
No,
is...
I mean, not the driveway. Like, if you're coming down Prescott from Chickering towards High Street, currently it's pretty wide open there. You can see if there's someone coming up from
Gotcha.
the mills.
Yep.
And I think to Ms. Sarni's point earlier, like, or maybe it was Jim. Anyway, someone brought up that, like,
About the turning
people might
movements.
not be able to
Right.
see that they're about to run into traffic if the building comes up far enough. And so Yeah.
That's something I can get a definitive answer for you on. My recollection right now is no, it will not. It's measured 14 and a half feet back from the edge of the traveled way, which I believe the building, even off of High Street, is further back than the 14 and a half feet. Something else I will also note, just while we're talking about this as well, when we did look at the site distance measurements for the driveway, there is clear line of sight to and from both the West Mill and East Mill driveways to High Street. Just because I know there's a comment about the separation of those intersections as well, but there is more than sufficient sight distance for a, say the two vehicles pull up at the same time from one of the driveways and from High Street. When they complete their turning maneuvers, there's more than enough sight distance for them to identify the other one.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anyone else from the community that would like to come speak? All right.
Michael Ronayne, 24 Prescott Street, directly across the street from the proposed structure. Just a few comments based off what was discussed tonight. Obviously, I mean, it being as close to the Sarni's house as it is nuts, but just touching upon comments about how it would change the neighborhood and setback from the sidewalk and the street on Prescott and the building's height. I mean, from my own personal perspective, walking out my front door or sitting on my front porch, to the left, to the right, and in front is going to be a structure, 45 feet high. So I mean, aside from I also asked last meeting the distance from my front steps. I don't know if we have a measurement on that, but it's pretty close to the sidewalk. So it's about the street's distance from my front steps. So the entire front of my house is going to be engulfed by this building. So aside from setback from the Sarni's house and setback from the street, I mean, height is huge. And looking out your front door and 45 feet up there being a building is nuts. And I think that certainly throws the whole street off. I mean, they talked about matching the setback of the houses on the street, but the houses on the street are what, 30 feet wide? I mean, this spans that whole way down Prescott. The setback doesn't matter at that point. It's not a house. So I think height should be a top consideration. And going back to the point that was brought up earlier about density, if the farms was a 40B, and that was 26 per acre, and this is 48 per acre, that's almost 50%. And I'm not saying cut it in half and et cetera, but that's almost a 50% difference, and that was using 40B. So that seems pretty drastic. And then just a personal viewpoint on it. I mean, this was my first house. I bought it to start a family, and definitely not what you want in a family neighborhood. And I think the precedent that's been set by the developer is, I mean, someone last meeting asked, would the playground be for use of the community, and they made it clear it's for residents of that building. So I think the precedent is set on what they're going to be like to the neighborhood. So that's all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Renee. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? I think we've hit almost everybody in the room. All right, with that, do we have a motion to continue to May 21st at 7 p.m.?
I'll make a motion to continue to May 21st at 7 p.m. or 7:30?
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
yes, and it'll be
I gave my
here.
aye.
It'll be yes. Sorry, Ms. Jacobs. We had a question of whether or not it was here, and yes, the answer is it will be here. All right. Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.